So hey guys, this is your favorite fictional vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto had the multiple ancient zanpakuto and become overpowered. But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. Two males walked side by side down a long and dusty road. The taller of the two seemed older, and walked with the sort of gait of someone who has imbibed copious amounts of alcohol, and is proud of it. His expression appeared to be locked in a sake-induced daze. The other male, who seemed to be quite a bit younger, and was only marginally shorter, had an expression of fond exasperation upon his face, the kind one gains after having to deal with young children or stubborn uncles. The younger male, Naruto, turned to his mentor, teacher and irritating superior, Oi, Ero Sennin. Not receiving a response, Naruto waited a few seconds for the man to walk slightly ahead of him, and swiftly booted him in the rear, sending the man flying into a bush. Oi, Gaki, what? The man, Jiraiya, could be heard grumbling and complaining as he slowly dragged himself out of the underbrush he had landed in. What have I been teaching you about respecting your elders? I don't know, Ero Sennin. I stopped listening when you started groping a woman in the middle of your speech. Naruto, his blonde hair shining in the noonday sun, had a faint look of distaste on his face, even as he recalled the punch that the woman had delivered to his sensei, knocking the man flat and making Naruto smile non-stop for hours. Jeer. Aiya had finally managed to extricate himself from the apparently quite troublesome bush. He turned, eyes glinting, with a smile that seemed entirely too evil for Naruto's face. Well then boy, how out I teach you how to respect your elders properly. Naruto spared a single glance, before both arms blurred, a dozen kunai pinning the sage to a tree as a gigantic spike of earth erupted where the man had been standing. Before the ninja in the trees could blink, she and her 3 cohorts were swiftly beheaded by a blur of steel. Naruto touched down again next to Jiraiya, who was calmly picking the kunai out. The man handed the dozen knives to the teen, who gratefully stowed them back in his pouch. Jiraiya glanced at the 2 swords Naruto had used, both once more at Naruto's hips, fully sheathed. One of these days, Gaki, you're going to have to show Tsunade and me those swords of yours. I know, but the longer I can postpone it, the better, right? Whatever kid, now let's go. Did you see who those bounty hunters were? Yeah. Naruto nonchalantly lifted his arms behind his head, yawning as he replied, small timers. Not worth turning in. All right brat. The 2 continued on their way, heading towards Konoha. The 4 swords on Naruto's back making slight whispering noises as he moved. The scroll on Jiraiya's back provided similar noises, something that Naruto hadn't been able to appreciate until his swords. His zanpakutos did the same. Hokage's office, Konoha. Tsunade paced relentlessly within her office, Shizune in the background with Sakura, both trying to calm her down. Her mind was stuck within a rather circular train of thought, all focused on why Jiraiya and Naruto were a day late. If Akatsuki had captured Naruto, there was no way of knowing, and no way for her to save the little brat without any knowledge on the mysterious organization, which not even Jiraiya had been able to pin down. That Jiraiya hadn't sent a toad was both worrying and not at the same time. It meant only one of 3 things. 1. Nothing was wrong. They were merely delayed by something unavoidable, and so would be here shortly. 2. There had been an attack or something of the sort, but not serious enough for Jiraiya to tell her. And 3. Jiraiya was dead, and so could not send her any news. Tsunade wished Jiraiya was here so she could punch him. Half a mile away from Konoha, Jiraiya sneezed. He hoped some pretty girl was talking about him. Naruto grumbled as he continued at the horribly slow pace set by his teacher. Honestly, if the man hadn't insisted on the tortuously slow pace, they would have been home yesterday. Naruto also knew that the man's excuse was just as terrible. You need to work on patience. Sure, Ero Sennin, sure. Especially after the days he had to spend staking out the most random and desolate places imaginable, all on the orders of his psychopathic teacher. Naruto perked up however, as he felt faint traces of chakra in the air. He backed up. ND tried to see the barrier Jiraiya had told him about. The barrier protected Konoha, warning its inhabitants of whomever crossed its lines. He let the faintest trickle of chakra enter one eye, while keeping the other tightly shut. Jiraiya had said that it was better to look out of one enhanced eye, than have both be incapacitated and useless. Not that it had stopped the man from removing one sense after another over the course of days, trying to make him as efficient as possible. Now Naruto was sensitive to even the faintest hints of chakra. He had even picked up on where the Kyubi had appeared, 16 years ago. Though Jiraiya said that wasn't very impressive since Naruto held the beast in his mind and so could instantly and accurately sense its presence, or even the lingering signs of it. However, when they snuck into Kumo, the teen had picked up on both the Nibi and the Hachibi's chakras, and then Jiraiya had allowed a bit of surprise and pride show on his face. Naruto was glad. They were almost at Konoha, and if he focused, he could hear the barest hints of sound coming from the direction of the village. He cast a pleading look at his mentor, and the man rolled his eyes, sighed gustily, pinching his nose and nodded. Fine brat, yada. Naruto's yell didn't even faze the Sannin, who at this point was selectively deaf to such events. The hyperactive ninja who had been cooped up for the past hour or so grinned entirely too widely at his mentor, and then took off. Said mentor groaned before following at the same speed. Konoha Gate. Azuma and Katetsu, the so-called perpetual gatekeepers, blinked in shock as they heard a long, drawn-out yell coming from the road that led into Konoha. They leaned out slightly, and gaped at the approaching dust cloud with some trepidation. Before they could enter battle positions, however, they felt a very familiar chakra at the edge of their senses, and their mouths opened in shock as they felt Naruto's distinct chakra heading towards them at high speed. It was closely followed by Jiraiya-sama's chakra, which assured them. Laughing, they returned to their posts, only to blink in surprise as a giant, billowing cloud of dust blew by them. They looked up at Naruto's sheepish face, as Jiraiya-sama held him by the collar, groaning. Azuma spoke first. It's been boring without you, Naruto. Good to see you back. Naruto grinned happily, his black robes fluttering in the wake of his passage as he took in their genuine gladness. It's great to be back in Konoha. Jiraiya shook his head as they signed in, and the two ninja sped off towards the Hokage tower. Tsunade grinned at Shizune and Sakura, making them question her. She raised a finger to her lips, as suddenly all three kunoichi could hear a yell. Ba-chan. Tsunade's grin disappeared, replaced with a stormy expression as she wound up and slammed her fist perfectly into Naruto's face as he appeared in the room. The teen paused, and then was shot out of the room like a marshmallow fired from a cannon, and went zooming off into the distance. Ahem. Tsunade. Shizune and Sakura turned around slowly to stare at Jiraiya, the latter two looking apologetic, and the former looking thunderous. What do you want, you old lecher? Tsunade demanded of Jiraiya. Well, you see, Haim, I've worked very hard to keep my student from getting injured, and it appears that you've banished him rather firmly. I'd like to get him back. Jiraiya grinned as he spoke, wiggling his eyebrows at the fifth Hokage in an entirely suggestive manner while serious-sounding words spewed from his mouth. You old goat, you come back after 2.5 years, and all you two do is greet me in inappropriate ways. Sakura hid behind Shizune, who had an entirely serene expression on her face, as the two Sannin bickered worse than Naruto and Sasuke used to. After a few minutes, Naruto seemed to drag himself up into the room, collapsing heavily onto the floor. Jiraiya poked him with a stick the man had pulled out of nowhere. Oi, brat, get up, Naruto groaned, before floating up into a standing position as if he was a puppet. Hi Ba-chan, hi Shizune-chan, hi Sakura-chan, I don't get a hi brat, but I came here with you Ero Sennin. I see how it is Gaki. Excuse me you two. Tsunade impatiently interrupted the random byplay that had cropped up between the two jokers before her. Now, we need to know precisely where Naruto is, ability and power-wise. Naruto stepped forward, all signs of playfulness gone from his face as he stood in front of his Hokage. I've gained greater mastery over the Rasengan. I've increased my resistance to genjutsu. My taijutsu has gotten better, and now I am an S-rank ninja, which is only augmented by my sword's powers. Tsunade perked up at the mention of swords. Since Hayate's death before the Sand Sound invasion, there hadn't been many non-Anbu swordsmen or women. However, she just couldn't see Naruto wielding swords. Oh really? Care to demonstrate? Naruto gained a hesitant look, then as he took in the eager and slightly impatient looks from all sides, He plunged his right arm to his left side, and in one smooth movement, unsheathed the blade at his left hip. Holding it vertically, he proclaimed, "This is Hirenmaru. And this," his left hand swept the blade at his right hip up and out, "is Zabumaru." A faint sense of chill pervaded the room, which even Sakura picked up on. Naruto grinned as he felt the rush of power associated with drawing his blades fill him. The other occupants in the room examined the swords, before Naruto swiftly re-sheathed them. Tsunade looked pensive, before posing a question, "What do they do, Naruto?" I've been trying to keep that a secret, Ba-chan. I don't want anyone to get a hold of that information. Especially not Akatsuki." Naruto looked apologetic and resolved, a face that Tsunade and Jiraiya had agreed made him look slightly constipated. "Tell me anything you can about your swords then." Naruto brightened up, glad he could discuss more mundane things. "Okay, Hirenmaru and Zabumaru are technically the weaker set, with the other two being the stronger ones. I don't like using those casually, since they can cause a lot of damage. I get a speed boost regardless of which one I'm using, though one gives a higher speed boost than the others. In other words, not much. Though how fast are you? And how much of a speed boost?" At this Naruto looked serious, and smirked slightly. "I'm as fast as Gai-sensei normally, and Ero-sennin tells me I approach the speed of the fourth Hokage with any of the swords out, and are as fast as him with the speed sword." Tsunade's eyes widened. Such speeds would make Naruto the fastest in the village. "I suppose we'll set you up against Gai at some point, to get your max speed confirmed." Naruto nodded, before adopting a serious expression. "So whose team would I be put on? I'm the last genin in the Konoha 12. As Tsunade opened her mouth to answer, a voice came from the window. "Why, mine of course, you were never taken off Team 7. Naruto looked over at the window, smirking at Kakashi. "Oh really? That's great." Kakashi gave Naruto a sideways glance, slightly suspicious of the open smirk on the teen's face, unsure how to take the more confident approach of his old and again student. Everyone's attention snapped back to Tsunade as she cleared her throat. "Yes, well, we'll have Kakashi test you and Sakura to see how you three fit together in a three-man team for now. The test will be tomorrow morning, that will give you time to rest and recharge. Naruto, and for you, Jiraiya, to tell me the latest intel." Naruto saluted Tsunade, snapped off a quick, "Sure Ba-chan," ducked a thrown paperweight, and disappeared out the window, leaving a small package in Kakashi's hand. Tsunade turned to Jiraiya, dismissing Shizune, Sakura and Kakashi, who was in awe over his shiny new book. "So, what news on the Akatsuki? Also, is there anything else you can tell me about Naruto?" Jiraiya and Tsunade both pretended to not notice that Kakashi lingered behind. "Well, as he has said, I would not hesitate ranking the boy as S rank. He has managed to learn more ninjutsu, so he isn't as sadly limited to summoning, Rasengan, and Kage Bunshin. As usual, the brat manages to be incapable of learning C and D rank ninjutsu, but B, A and S ranks are no issue. I don't want to." At this, Jiraiya turned and smirked at where Kakashi was leaning in the shadows, "spoil the surprise of what those jutsus are, of course. It's best if you learn firsthand. Oh, Naruto displays even more idiot savant tendencies by being a genius at seals. Gaki is currently fast approaching seal master rank like myself, and will probably be a grand master within a year." Next morning, Suna. Two cloaked Akatsuki members attack Suna's cage, Gaara. Next morning, Training Ground 7, Konoha. Kakashi and Sakura faced off against each other, both wondering where the orange, Naruto was. Kakashi's eyes flicked towards the small copse of trees that hid the two loyal Sannin and Shizune every now and then. Sakura's gasp alerted him to the arrival of Naruto, who had flickered into view. "Good, now that we're all here, we can start. Like before, there are 2 bells, and you need to get them from me before sundown." Kakashi smiled his particular eye smile at Naruto and Sakura. "Nay, sensei, should we use lethal force, like you said last time?" Sakura's smile sent a shiver down Kakashi's spine. Kakashi hurriedly waved his hands back and forth. "That won't be necessary, Sakura." Naruto grinned and replied, "Good. We won't be short 1 jonin tomorrow then." As he completed the sentence, Naruto's form blurred, a kunai clashing against Kakashi's own hurriedly drawn one. Kakashi's face had gone blank as he looked up at Naruto, finding that he needed quite a bit of his strength to keep the kunai away from his chest. I didn't say begin, Naruto. Naruto's face was equally blank. No one calls a ninja battle to start in the real world, Kaka-sensei. He then stabbed downwards with his other hand, the ground cratering as Kakashi managed to get clear. The two men seemed to blur across the field, kunai flashing as they repeatedly met, sparks flying as the knives scraped against each other. After 2 minutes, they separated, both at either end of the field. Naruto sheathed his kunai, and then knelt, slapping both hands on the ground and then lifting one. All 5 fingers pointed at Kakashi as Naruto roared, Kinten, Goryu. Each finger lit up with the symbol of an element. Lightning, fire, wind, water and earth. An elemental dragon roared out of each respective symbol, each flying at Kakashi with such speed that the Jonin barely had time for a substitution due to the small amount of distance between the two men. A huge explosion covered the clearing with smoke as the 5 dragons crashed into the poor log, detonating with enough force to bend trees and make the other ninja in the clearing cover their faces. Sakura, Shizune, and Tsunade has equally dumbfounded expressions on their faces, the last 3 minutes surprising them immensely. Jiraiya looked on with an extremely proud and satisfied look, happy that others would be able to see how well his student could acquit himself. Kakashi was crouched behind a tree, now full aware of both Naruto's Fuinjutsu skills and his far increased threat level. Naruto called out to the trees as the smoke cleared, a figure becoming visible within it. Finally ready to get serious, Kaka-sensei. He smirked, a hand falling to the handle of the sword on his right hip. Kakashi stared at Naruto, Sharingan bared as he truly stood ready to take his student seriously as a fellow S-rank. Both eyes narrowed as Naruto unsheathed his lower right side sword, the blade flashing in the sunlight. He tensed, then jumped clear as the ground that he had formerly been occupying cratered underneath the force of Naruto's blow. An intense look of concentration on his face as he strained to predict the movements of his former student, knowing the Sharingan was helping immensely. Naruto grinned now, arm slashing at his former sensei. Managing to look involved yet casual, each blow cratering the ground as Kakashi hurriedly jumped out of the way at the last second. The teen paused for a moment, a twinge of worry crossing his face as he felt the seal on his neck throb. Kakashi instantly capitalized on the second of reprieve, dashing over to the river and running through a set of hand seals. Sending a water dragon and a fireball in Naruto's direction. Naruto calmly raised his hand, 5 elemental dragons rushing out at the water dragon and fireball, annihilating both and causing Kakashi to fall back as the wind dragon and earth dragon survived to pursue him, both exploding against the trees. Kakashi knelt behind a rock, his breath coming harder as he took stock of Naruto's new level of power. The seconds he wasted, however, were crucial, as it gave Naruto ample time to sheath the sword he wielded, and draw the one on his right shoulder. The very blade itself seemed to hum as Kakashi stepped back into the clearing. His eyes widening as they took in the new blade. Naruto smiled widely as he spoke to his sensei. "Sorry Kakashi-sensei, I'm gonna have to end this now." The teen simply disappeared, not even a blur to signify movement in any direction. Kakashi attempted to dodge, his Sharingan spinning wildly as he tried to predict an attack he couldn't see, feeling oddly like he used to before he had the Sharingan. Being unable to keep up with his sensei's speed, one cut appeared on the Jonin's chest, followed by another on his arm, and then his leg. Within seconds, dozens of shallow cuts began to show on Kakashi's torso, legs and arms, all without a hair being spotted of Naruto. After 10 seconds, with the spectators having counted well over 200 small cuts on Kakashi, Naruto reappeared in his original position, sword hanging loosely in his grip, looking only slightly ruffled from his high-speed maneuver. In his other hand, he held both bells, before swiftly tossing one to Sakura, who barely managed to snatch it out of the air, shock and awe dulling her reactions. Kakashi let out a low groan as he collapsed to his knees, blood slowly trickling from his numerous, if shallow, wounds. "I guess you win, Naruto, Sakura. And it's only midday." The Jonin cast his eyes upward, breath coming slowly. "I guess you have really improved, Naruto." Although Kakashi looked past Naruto, at Sakura. "I don't think Sakura really had time to do much. You hogged the whole fight, Naruto." Naruto grinned sheepishly, scratching the back of his head as he turned to his female team member. Hey, sorry, Sakura-chan, I got a bit excited. Sakura's expression changed to one of fond exasperation. Here, let me show you what I've learned then. So saying, she drew back her fist and slammed it into the ground, creating a crater nearly on par with those made by Tsunade. Skies over Suna. Gaara panted, the twin attacks by the Akatsuki pair swiftly wearing him down. The combination of explosives and puppets being a fair bit more than he could keep track of. He kept sending a small pulse of chakra to the seal on his neck every few minutes, knowing he might need Naruto's assistance at any second. Training Ground 7, Konoha. Sakura ran her hands over Kakashi's torso one last time, making sure all the cuts were healed as he sat against the trunk of a tree. Recovery. From his brief but intense bout with Naruto. Naruto himself was staring blankly into the air, a faint look of worry on his face. Jiraiya bored a hole into the side of Naruto's face, his own growing more and more worried as Tsunade gave him looks. Kakashi coughed. Well, it seems like we have no shortage of firepower now. Naruto, any chance we could see any of your other seals in action? Naruto. Kakashi's last query was worried as Naruto's eyes shot wide open, a look of extreme panic crossing the teen's face as a hand shot to the side of his neck, clamping down on a suddenly flaring seal. Naruto spun towards Jiraiya, shouting, Gaara is down. Skies over Suna. Gaara sighed softly as he fell from the sky, chakra spent as he sent a spike of chakra towards the seal on his neck. GLA. To have at least spared his beloved village from the depredation of the two Akatsuki members, knowing that the cavalry in the form of a royally pissed off Naruto was soon to arrive. Jiraiya reacted with speed to Naruto's cry, biting his thumb and slamming his hand on the ground, summoning the boss of toads, Gamabunta. Kakashi, Sakura and Shizune were caught off guard, not expecting to be sudden L.Y. on the back of one of the most respected summons in Konoha. Tsunade, from long experience with the sensation with herself, merely looked at Jiraiya in consternation and a demanding expression. Jiraiya, how can Naruto know that? Her expression was stern. This was no longer a happy Shisho, proud at the accomplishments of her student, and proud of Naruto as well. This was the fifth Hokage, Tsunade Senju. She did not have a trace of disbelief in her demeanor at Naruto's exclamation, not bothering with the thought that Naruto was lying, for she knew of the intense friendship and brotherhood between the two Jinchuriki. Jiraiya looked over at Tsunade as he replied, before his gaze cut back to Naruto, who was taking deep breaths as the teen's face seemed to be rapidly transitioning from shock to anger. And from there straight to a towering rage. I've told you of his mastery over seals. A year or so ago he devised a seal that would act as a long-distance method of communication, and he has been modifying it since. Gaara has one, and the only reason he would call loudly enough for help that my seal would burn as well as if he was well and truly defeated, and the only ones who can do that are Kages, myself and yourself. Tsunade, Naruto, and lastly, the Akatsuki. No country is at war and all three of us are here, therefore it must be Akatsuki. Sakura tentatively spoke up from the side, but Jiraiya-sama, what can we possibly do? Before Jiraiya could respond, Naruto swung his top right sword from its sheath, and then calmly intoned, this, and disappeared. Jiraiya frowned. Well, there was no stopping the brat in any case, but I wish he took backup. No matter, I'll be following on Bunta. I trust you, Kakashi, Sakura, and hopefully Guy's team will follow. We'll need the raw firepower. Knowing the kid's speed, we won't have to go to Suna, and can probably just track Naruto to where the Akatsuki team is. Shizune looked confused. But how will you track Naruto? Jiraiya guffawed. Ha ha ha, that's a good one. How can we not track Naruto by the ground-shaking explosions? Besides that, he should be giving small pulses of chakra to the seal so I can track him. Well then, no time to waste, Kakashi. Get Guy and his team, and make sure to bring Sakura, I'll be at the front gate. Tsunade turned towards Sakura, giving her some last-minute advice and a couple soldier pills as Kakashi dashed away. Shizune, however, continued to look confused. Forgive me, Jiraiya-sama, but then why did you summon Gamabunta? The leader of the Toads cast a baleful eye upwards as he spoke in his rumblingly loud voice. Yes Jiraiya, I'd like to know too. At this, Jiraiya chuckled nervously. Well, I had two reasons, one, to keep you lot from shouting questions at me, and second, to send him as support for Naruto. Considering the brat's speed, that won't be an issue, since Bunta simply won't be able to keep up with the speed of the fastest ninja alive. Instead, Bunta, I thank you for your time, bye for now. Tsunade gave Jiraiya an incredulous look as the Toad boss grumbled something about useless sages before disappearing with a gigantic poof. Fastest ninja alive, certainly that's the third Raikage, or guy. Not Naruto. Jiraiya chuckled as he, Tsunade, Sakura and Shizune landed on the ground. Oh no, that's definitely Naruto, no one can compete with the speed boost his sword gives him. One of them is built purely for speed and power, after all. And that's the one he drew, you'll notice. Somewhere north of Konoha, land of fire. Naruto dashed through the forest, Zanjutsu. Used Shikai letting him sprint far faster than normal. Once he was certain he was beyond the watch of Konoha ninja, he took off, swiftly utilizing the air-walking technique to fly through the air. He knew that for a slow-moving team, it took 3 days to reach Suna. But he was moving at full speed, and was mere instants away from activating Bankai. Naruto sent a small pulse into the master seal on his neck, directing it to Gaara. Cursing that his latest seal improvement hadn't been tested yet, and vowing to do so the instant he rescued his friend. He waited 5 long minutes for a response, and then when he finally received none, roared with a fury that sent birds fleeing from the trees for miles as his eyes gradually became red, his pupils taking on the distinctive cat-like look that signified demonic chakra in his system. Bankai. Giving zero thought to staying hidden, now that he wished to expose himself anyways, he blasted his power as far as it would go, and as the massive Clea Veer in his hand transformed into a small but deadly Tonto, he blurred forward, easily surpassing the speed he was moving at before tenfold. The air seemed to stretch and then break before Naruto, a low W boom sounding in the distance as the team grinned darkly, the sonic boom heralding his approach as he used the trickle of chakra he felt from Gaara's seal as a locator, glad of his last improvement. That allowed him to push chakra into the seal that would steadily pulse back out, acting as a chakra version of an echo locator. Konoha Gate, Konoha. Jiraiya cast a baleful eye over his gathered team. Guy and Lee seemed somber, well, as somber as they could get, with only some small exclamations of youth. Neji seemed to be indulging in some light meditation, as the sage could feel the Hyuga's chakra settling in preparation of their mission. Tenten looked like she would rather not be here, a feeling that Sakura shared, apparently. Kakashi was counting his kunai, giving him occasional glances in case he gave the order to move out. Jiraiya barked, all right, we've dilly-dallied enough. For those who are unaware, or were given incomplete or not to your satisfaction commands, we are trailing Naruto Uzumaki. He in turn, is tracking down the Akatsuki team that were sent out to overpower and kidnap the 5th Kazekage, Gaara. I trust you know why this is happening. At the news of who was kidnapped, the teens gave a small gasp. As anyone capable of taking down a cage was not someone they wanted to be sent into combat. Guy and Kakashi's spines straightened as they dropped into their most serious moods. Well aware that they were going to be backup for Jiraiya, and protection for the teens. Unfortunately, Kakashi and Naruto had a bit of a spar, and Kakashi has under normal chakra levels. We are therefore unable to do anything other than wait for his chakra to restore, which is why I brought these bentos with me. So saying, the Toad Sanin brought out enough bentos for all, setting him out as he swiftly broke his chopsticks and set into his meal. Kakashi and Guy hesitated for only a second before dropping to the ground as well, setting into their meals with gusto. The remains of the group, however, gave the 3 adults looks of utter shock. Jiraiya looked up. What are you idiots waiting for? I command you as your team captain to eat. You need your strength for this, as we will be fighting against 2 S-rank enemies, both of them capable of going toe-to-toe with a Jinchuriki cage and winning. Chastened, and with the reason for the impromptu meal known, Lee, Neji, Sakura, and Tenten started wolfing down the food as well. Konoha-Suna border. The speed Naruto moved at ate up the distance between him and his prey, as the vista beneath him switched from forest to grassland to desert. Flying over the dunes at well over the speed of sound, the boom from the broken sound barrier a continuous thunder that accompanied him. Naruto pushed, and he felt the cone of air around him slim as his speed doubled. Tensa Zangetsu allowing him to travel at speeds well beyond that of any other ninja, save the Raikages and the 4th Hokage. He felt the pulse of his echo of chakra CLOs by as he dropped abruptly out of sonic speed, tumbling into a sand dune as the shock sent him off course. As he burst from the other side of the dune, covered in sand but no less furious, he let Bankai fade as he continued his dash. Having easily eaten up more than half the distance, Naruto continued his run, taking a small break to take a sip of water, then swiftly taking off again, utilizing the air walking technique again to fly faster than he could run. He felt 2 chakra signatures on the farthest edge of his perception, dropping out of Shikai as well in response as he closed the distance. Grinning again as he kept up his run. Within 10 minutes, he sheathed Zangetsu again, pulling out Zabumaru and Hirinmaru as he crept closer, seeing the 2 unmistakable cloaks in the distance. Beyond the tree line for a quick assassination. He cursed within the privacy of his own head, creeping as close as he could to the 2 oddly matched figures. One seemed to have an incredibly bad hunchback, or it was simply something else. Sasori, most likely, due to the puppet master rumor he and Jiraiya had heard of within the Akatsuki ranks. And there was a blonde ninja on top of a weird flying creature. That didn't look summoned and looked like it was made from some white substance. If the white stuff was clay, that would make the other of the duo Deidara. Naruto cursed again. 2 long-range specialists. Considering the lengths such people would go to keep others away, he knew he was in for a fight. Naruto refined his chakra. Then using the latent speed boost from Zangetsu, he blurred away. Swiftly lopping off the head of the bird, which due to the chakra pulses had to contain Gaara, and carried it off into the woods. After leaving a clone or 2 with the creepy-looking head to dig Gaara out and get him away from the soon-to-be war zone, Naruto stepped out in front of the confused-looking Akatsuki team. The team growled at the duo. "You took down the 1. Now you have to fight the 9. Chakra shone as it swirled around his body, clothes rippling as Naruto's chakra pressure skyrocketed, the amused expression of the 2 S-rank ninjas changing to shock and weariness as they realized. It wasn't some snot-nosed brat that challenged them, but a fellow Kage-class ninja. Deidara tried to look unimpressed and failed, commenting from his now beheaded steed, Sasori Dana, you think L. Eater will be mad if we brought in the Inhibit and the Kyubi at once, The clay expert's hands went into the small pouches on his waist, hands busy doing their thing. The hunched-over figure Simi did not react as over a dozen needles shot at the team. No, I can't imagine that would displease anyone, least of all leader. You have plenty of clay, right? Naruto's expression became thunderous as his swords sang through the air deflecting the projectiles with contemptuous ease. His voice shook, not with fear, as the 2 adults assumed, but with anger as he responded, "No, you're not taking anyone. Not me, not Gaara. No, instead, I'm going to kill both of you. Right here, right now." As he finished his sentence, Naruto dashed towards the 2 cloaked villains, swords poised to deliver scything death. He had to swerve away again as a cloud of needles shot at him followed by some sort of miniature bird made of clay. Naruto slashed at the clay bird with Zabumaru, then coughed as the sword was cloaked by a small explosion. He resolved to only use Hirinmaru against the explosives as he pondered how to separate the 2, seeing that they appeared to be well matched. However, they were both long-range fighters. Whereas Naruto had been trained to the point where he was a universal fighter, though he preferred mid and short-range combat, due to most of his attacks falling in that range. Therefore, as he raised his hand and again released the 5 elemental dragons, he rapidly started planning. Just as Naruto had formed the bare basics of a plan, namely, to resort to Kyubi chakra to separate the duo, he heard laughter. An altogether familiar laughter. He looked past the Akatsuki duo, into the trees, as another pair of Akatsuki emerged, and his heart sank. Itachi stepped into the small clearing. A chortling Kisame only a half-step behind him. He assessed the situation. Kyubi container with twin swords. Another Akatsuki pair, with no sight of their charge. Any of the 4S raw NK shinobi would have been more than sufficient to the task of capturing the young Jinchuriki 2.5 years ago. Now, after that time period in the sole company of one of the legendary Sannin. Itachi held no notions that he had any idea what the teen had learned. Judging by the young ninja's stance, Naruto had obviously learned something of sword combat, multiple blade styles by the look of things. But Itachi never assumed. Most ninja would see Naruto with 2 blades and assume that if they removed one from him, he would be far less dangerous. Itachi was not most ninjas. He had not got 10 as strong as he had by underestimating foes that could be nothing less than lethal no matter how old they were. He mused, for a brief fraction of a second, that being around ninjas that were known for their ability to challenge whole villages in a group, and being part of an organization that had made its mission to hunt down 9 walking natural disasters had skewed his sense of what level a foe needed to be at to prove a threat. Kisame, however, had not wasted a second in sizing up his more grown-up opponent, and liked what he saw. The teen held the swords like a practiced fighter. He didn't have the look of a veteran. But that particular word utterly described the boy's mentor. There was no way he was facing a normal swordsman, the likes of which grew in the hidden villages. No, Kyubi Jinchuriki would be at the highest level one could reach in 2.5 years, which would be formidable indeed if he had other abilities to back that up. Most regarded Kisame as a stupid, if insanely powerful ninja. He wasn't on par with Itachi, but then again, most likely only leader had the smarts to go toe-to-toe with Itachi, and Itachi would probably still win. Kisame held the much younger Uchiha in the highest regard. And despite how much he respected the brat's teacher, the Nine-Tails container faced a hopeless battle against 4S rank ninjas. Deidara and Sasori seemed surprised at the sight of their 2 co-workers, but seemed to become even more relaxed as Naruto watched. He couldn't blame them. One-on-one, he was confident he could take down all of them except for Itachi easily. Though perhaps it would take longer against the chakra-sapping sword, he amended mentally. 4-on-1. He'd have to really pull out all the stops, but he was still incredibly reluctant to use Bankai. But if it meant his life, he would. Nay, Sasori Dana, how high do you think the Jinchuriki's chances of survival are? The question was lazily delivered, and the only reply was a grunt from the hunched-over figure. Itachi frowned. His head snapped up, followed only a second later by Kisame's as both of them rapidly put distance between them and the spot they were occupying only moments before. As Deidara and Sasori turned to give them incredulous looks, the ground detonated underneath the 2 remained Akatsuki members. Konoha outskirts, land of fire. The team made a brisk pace as they sprinted across the landscape. Unerringly pointed in Naruto's direction by Jiraiya. The group had been augmented by Temari, who had heard of the news of Gaara's capture and demanded to be allowed to accompany them. They had been running for less than half an hour when Jiraiya called a halt. What is it, Jiraiya-sama? Kakashi queried the Sannin, his own face growing worried as the Sannins paled drastically. The other group members, having not personally seen the prowess of the Sannin in battle save for Guy, only looked about uncertainly, with only Neji feeling a growing sense of discomfort. He had never seen Guy look so serious, or Kakashi as worried as he was right now. The 2 Jonin were always either beyond exuberant or unflappable. To see them looking as frightened as children made his own sense of panic begin to overwhelm his iron control. He realized that a group made up of Jonin, Chunin, and 1 Sannin was unlikely to be attacked, yet with Jiraiya's face coming closer and closer to Agisha's. And not in the way the Toad Sannin would have preferred, Neji instead chose to try and control his sudden fear. Naruto is no longer facing merely Sasori of the Red Sands and Deidara, formerly of the Earth Village. Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hoshigaki have appeared from Kami knows where. That puts him alone against 4S rank ninjas. I would have bet all my money he can solidly trounce the first 2. But with the likes of Itachi and Kisame there, I am not so certain. Okay, everyone gather round for a bit. As Jiraiya delivered his news, Guy and Kakashi seemed to stiffen. As both had had an encounter with the newer pair of ninjas. One that had left Kakashi bedridden for weeks after being on the wrong side of a single attack from Itachi. Intellectually, they were both S-rank ninjas themselves. But just as there was a vast gulf in power between them and Jiraiya, so was there a gulf between them and Itachi and Kisame. Guy remembered vaguely that the sight of Jiraiya had caused the 2 Rouge ninjas to flee. Which further increased his respect for the Sannin, and deepened his worry for Naruto. Neji and Temari, being the most capable of understanding the new threat amongst the younger ninjas, didn't truly grasp the significance. They had never fought the two shinobi, but there was no doubting that it was well known that no hunter nin had been sent after Itachi, and that anyone who could elicit the sort of reaction from these three war veterans instantly made them a threat beyond what they were capable of dealing with. Sakura, Lee and Tenten just gaped, trying and failing to grasp the magnitude of what they were facing. They had thought that they would be mere support for the true fighters, those being Jiraiya, Guy and Kakashi, as well as medical support, but had no real concept of the sort of situation they had been flung into. That they were running alongside 3 S-rank shinobi in order to provide backup for a fourth against 2 enemy S-ranks seemed plausible. But not 4 S-rank enemies. The group meekly surrounded Jiraiya as the eldest among them looked at each of them in turn. Jiraiya seemed to be deep in thought, weighing the pros and cons in his mind. He knew, theoretically, that if Naruto went all out, using all 3 of his mastered Bankai, 1 Shikai, and the Kyubi, he would win. If from sheer attrition, if from nothing else. The only one of that group that would be able to last as long as Naruto in a battle of stamina would be Kisame, and the master-apprentice pair had already conducted tests to see if Kisame's sword could absorb Reiatsu attacks, which it couldn't. Leaving the man wide open against 3 Bankai. Jiraiya finally nodded to himself, then addressed the group. Kakashi, summon and leave one of your dogs with this group. Obviously the fastest. I realize Pakuna's cute, but we don't have time for him to slowly lead the relief team. You, Kakashi, Guy and I will race ahead to Naruto. Actually, summon your 2 fastest. Tenten, Lee, you 2 will be running back to Konoha, full speed, in order to get a full Anbu team. Tell them that I, Jiraiya, requested Code S to be carried out. That allows the 2 of you to lead, 10 full Anbu squads to us. Carry the dog on your way there. Sakura, Neji and Temari, you 3 will be following us at your own forced march pace with the second dog, tracking Kakashi, as will the first dog on the way back. As a warning, if you see building-sized toads and housing complex-sized explosions, stay well clear. Some of the strongest ninjas are about to clash. As Jiraiya was speaking, Kakashi had already summoned his full team of ninkin. He dismissed all but the 2 fastest, handed the lighter of the 2 to Lee, and instructed his dogs to track his scent and led their respective teams to him. And then the eldest 3 ninja rocketed off, shocking the younger ninja with their speed. The remainder nodded to one another, then Lee and Tenten took off the way they came, and Neji. Sakura and Temari followed after the older ninjas, albeit at a greatly reduced pace. Some clearing, Konoha-Suna border. As the dust cleared, Naruto saw a small, red-haired figure rising from the shattered remains of the hunchbacked puppet. He then flashed away as 3 clay birds detonated at head height. Hirako was my favorite puppet. He is hard to construct. You will pay dearly for this, Jinchuriki. Sasori's face was covered, but the malevolence of his voice was unmasked as he gazed about, trying to catch sight of the blonde-haired teen. He then had to jump more than 50 feet the side as said teen's right foot came down, seemingly with all the force of Tsunade's fists, cratered the ground and creating another small explosion, accompanied by a tremor. This time, as the dust cleared, the 4 Akatsuki members could see the young shinobi's face clearly. His eyes seemed to have become blood red, the irises slit like a cat's, and his hair seemed to spike up even more, becoming more animalistic. Surrender. Naruto-kun. You cannot hope to defeat all 4 of us at once. Itachi called out to the young man. You all seem to have forgotten something. Naruto's breath was harsh, the air becoming wild with unrestrained fury as his enemies felt his killing intent, magnified by the Kyubi's crash upon them, causing Deidara's knees to buckle slightly, and the rest to grimace or frown. I am not the 14-year-old boy you once surveyed. I am 16, and while it doesn't make too much of a difference to you, you now face a fully fledged S-rank shinobi. Furthermore, I will kill you all. Naruto's last sentence was roared as the presence of Kyubi's chakra skyrocketed, the teen's form seeming to glow red as the ground cratered under his feet. His movements, which up until now had been mildly difficult for Itachi to track with his normal fully developed Sharingan, became incomprehensible to the Uchiha's great shock, such was his speed. Consequently, Itachi was utterly unprepared when a blow smacked into his chest, sending him crashing away into the trees with a gasp. Kisame, used to tracking the movements of opponents far more nimble than himself, but not with the raw speed the Jinchuriki was displaying, was also caught flat-footed when a kick slammed out of figurative nowhere into the swordsman's back, throwing him clear across the clearing and into the trees opposite. Sasori had started unsealing his ultimate single puppet, knowing that an army against a single berserker ninja would give no benefit. He too was unprepared when a gigantic fire dragon Alf the size of the clearing engulfed him and his finest creation. Deidara had seen his compatriots fly off into the forest or be engulfed from relative safety. He had created a flying bird the instant he felt the Kyubi Jinchuriki's killing intent, or ki, turn into something more resembling the beast inside him than any normal ninja. He too was not safe from Naruto's rage. But as Itachi had noted earlier, it never pays to be complacent, least of all in the ninja world. However, just as Deidara had made an error, assuming Naruto to be incapable of moving into and fighting in the sky, so had Itachi. He had automatically assumed a man who unsheathed a pair of swords intended to use them. Naruto cast a baleful eye upwards, knowing that the type of ninja that Deidara was, he would not come down from his lofty perch until he had observed everything. Or at least until he thought he had observed everything. The teen grinned savagely as he thought that there was no real need to make such observations in a position of comfort, and promptly sent a number of elemental dragons out of his fingers at the swiftly retreating figure. He turned his head down to the now fully revealed, as a puppet, of all things, Akatsuki member. Now, Sasori, I kill you. As his hand went through Sasori's heart container, he thought it was awfully idiotic for such an intelligent ninja to clearly label his only organic organ as heart, and not expect all and sundry to take advantage of a weak spot like that. Removing his hand, Naruto watched dispassionately as the now fully dead Akatsuki member collapsed, down in a matter of less than a second. His grand puppet scroll of whatever he had been muttering about burned to ashes alongside the now deceased S-rank ninja's clothing. Naruto mused that using Kyubi's chakra, even in this low-intensity state that was about halfway between the one he had initially used on Sasuke in the Valley of the End, and against Neji in the Chunin finals, dulled his emotions quite a bit. Unless they were rage. He looked upwards once again, and decided the aerial ninja was having an altogether too good of a time, swooping and barely dodging around the half-dozen dragons still left. He had made them all fire, so they would detonate and hopefully consume or at least hurt some of the ninja. Alas, it was not to be, Naruto thought, as he made a water dragon and soared upwards on its back, making it look like his standard 5-dragon formation, further lulling Deidara into the illusion that he could not fly. Naruto grinned malevolently as he rode on top of the water dragon. He made a mental note to ride on top of earth dragons after this, as his clothes were getting incredibly soggy. Within a few seconds, he could see Deidara, and leapt off of the dragon, using the air walking ability to change direction mid-fall to land on top of the man's bird thing. Rasengan. The attack smashed into an utterly befuddled Deidara, crushing his ribcage and pulping his internal organs, almost instantly killing the man. The sheer force of the Kyubi-enhanced attack threw the Nukenin from the clay bird, Naruto jumping after him in order to behead him, since he wanted to take no chances. The Biju's chakra, while dulling Naruto's emotions, did not blunt his logic, and so the teen wasted no time in decapitating Deidara, and then using Shunpo to crash into the ground. Gaki. Kisame roared as he crashed out of the woods, sword whirling through the air. Naruto snarled wordlessly as he met the blow head-on, his twin blades stopping the much larger sword dead. The two ninja barely budged as they fought to overcome the other through sheer brute force, neither making any headway. Naruto soon tired of his progress, and with a shout drew on more of Kyubi's chakra, the fox happily providing it, even if only to avoid being captured, the force of which blew Kisame away. The man grimaced. While Samahata was eating the Kyubi's chakra, the teen wasn't letting it fill the air like he had as a boy, keeping it tightly reined in so he could use it and everyone could feel its presence, but the shark sword couldn't eat it. Die! Naruto screamed, riving both swords forwards, before abruptly disappearing. Reappearing several feet away, a blast of lightning already jumping from his hands. Byakurai. Kisame choked as the bolt seared straight through his left lung, the short distance and unexpectedness of the attack giving him no time to react. He had expected and assumed the Jinchuriki to attack with his swords, not with jutsu. He stared at the Kyubi brat balefully, as his chakra presence seemed to explode. He normally kept it held down when he fought someone seriously, but this was no longer a serious match, this was a fight for his life. Naruto merely bared his teeth menacingly as he matched the presence of the swordsman formerly from Kiri, the ground seeming to shake and crack under the two behemoths' feet. The two of them met again, the ground catering as they traded lightning-fast blows. However, no matter how much Kisame tried, he found he could not break the Jinchuriki's defenses, and Naruto realized his swordsmanship was not up to the task of breaking the guard of a true master's. Naruto eventually gave up a straight battle of force, and decided to reveal one of his many trump cards. Sit upon the frozen heavens, Hirinmaru. The very air seemed to pulse and cool 30 degrees as a shroud of mist covered the battlefield. Kisame waved his sword about, trying to clear it, but to no avail. He heard another shout within the mist, howl, Zabumaru. And the mist was blown away. Naruto is the center of the sudden breeze. Kisame, a former member of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist, gawked as he stared at the sudden appearance change of the two swords Naruto had been holding. Whereas one seemed to have only undergone a cosmetic change, turning from steel gray to resembling an icicle in sword form, the other had gone from a simple katana to a huge cleaver with jagged spikes at right angles to the rest of the sword. Somewhere in Fire Country, Jiraiya cursed as he dodged a tree, feeling nothing but rage from the seal on his neck. It was a cold rage. But he knew that Naruto was pulling on the Kyubi's chakra, and their current relationship, while not one of hatred, was far from cordial. He just hoped the beast of chakra didn't make a bid for freedom with monsters like Itachi and Kisame around. Problem, Jiraiya-sama, Kakashi queried from behind him, guy next to him and listening attentively. Both Jonin were well aware. They would be secondary to the likes of the Sannin and Naruto in this battle, but at least they weren't cannon fodder like the so-called reinforcements. Not as such, but with Naruto using the cube. Ice chakra, I can't tell what his situation is anymore, the backwash from it drowns out his own signals. So we have no idea what the situation is beyond what I knew originally. Then again, Jiraiya mused. I've operated on less information during the wars. Kakashi and Guy exchanged glances. Neither of them had been very old during the Third Shinobi War, and both would have wholeheartedly liked to entirely forget about their experiences during it. But both Jonin knew that without a doubt, bad intel was worse than no intel. So they were completely fine with knowing that Naruto was up against 4S rank ninjas, well, not completely. Since they would most likely be forced to fight one apiece, and that would be far from pleasant, but both realized the risks and knew they easily tied for third strongest ninja in the village. After the two Sannin and the now much more improved Naruto, they were honor-bound to fight against their students' and friends' students' opponents. Well, there's no hope but to keep going, really. I just hope we don't start feeling tremors. The last thing we need is for Naruto to go four tails trying to take those four down. Jiraiya's grim voice snapped the two younger ninja out of their daze. Both worried. Why would that be a bad situation? Jiraiya glanced at Guy as the man asked the question, and then turned back as he responded. Because in that state Naruto has no control. It's only the Kyubi. The best thing so far is that due to the relationship between the two being closer to a working one, Naruto can at least impart some sort of vague directive. The 9 tails before his body is taken over, but even then the devastation approaches what Tsunade, Orochimaru and I are capable of. Not to mention that the Kyubi would gleefully kill the 3 of us should we arrive too soon. The two Jonin again looked at each other, then the 3 lapsed back into silence as they sped onwards. Some forest next to some clearing, Konohasuna border. Itachi let Uda choked groan as he sat up from the ruins of a tree he was partially sitting in. As he awkwardly stood up he idly wondered how forests even managed to survive and exist in the middle of battles that redefined maps. Then he shook the odd thought away and started striding back to the clearing, Mangekyo Sharingan spinning in both eyes. He glumly thought that even his eyes wouldn't give him as much of an advantage as they normally did. Since for some reason or another Naruto moved too quickly to be tracked. Then again, as he got closer to the sounds of earth-shaking roars, he remembered that he had never been able to follow the movements of the 4th Hokage either. Itachi shook his head and paused, both eyes widening as he turned over his latest thoughts and how they had become rambling. Had he suffered some sort of head injury? Itachi quickly felt at his head, and after flushing his entire body with low-level healing chakra, decided that no, he must have just been slightly out of it. Any further thought was wiped out when a scream burst from the clearing, alongside a shockwave that blasted the only recently sensate ninja away and back into unconsciousness. Some clearing, Konohasuna border. Naruto gazed at Kisame, both of his irises a bright, blood red, pupils thin and cat-like. The chakra pressure and killing intent he currently exuded would have killed most Chunin and paralyzed Jonin. The man he stared at, however, merely blinked and brought his own chakra pressure to bear, matching the Jinchuriki's presence. Kisame had no need to match the teen for killing intent, seeing no point in it. Naruto roared, and a pulse of chakra exploded from him as the crater the teen stood in deepened and the three tails of pure, malevolent chakra behind him swayed in an invisible breeze. Kisame merely grunted as he held an arm up, blocking most of the wind and dust kicked up by the roar. That was when Naruto attacked. The blow was so powerful it sent Kisame careening through the forest. The Konoha ninja easily keeping pace as he raced forwards on all fours, then kicked the former Kiri ninja back into the clearing. Kisame coughed up a bit of blood as he shakily got to his feet. In the middle of the destroyed clearing. As he groggily looked around he decided that not only did this look like the perfect location for a lake, but that he wanted to take control of the battle for once. Kisame sucked in a huge breath, molding enough chakra in one attack to kill several Jonin, and exhaled, metric tons of water gushing out, creating a pond, and then a lake, and then a small sea in seconds. He kept the water in a huge bubble, with him on top. Kisame looked about for the Jinchuriki as Samahata healed his injuries. Kisame's search was short-lived, as just as the hole in his left lung sealed up, another was opened in his right. He gasped as 5 more of those piercing beams shot through him, leaving his body with a number of holes too many. The technique under him collapsed. A huge wave of water flooding in all directions as the hold Kisame held on is dissolved. Naruto swung Zabumaru from a great distance, and watched with glee as Kisame's head seemed to pop from his shoulders as the vastly elongated blade sheared through the S-rank ninja's neck. The teen fell to his knees as the toll of using Kyubi's chakra for so long hit, gasping for breath as the chakra cloak dissipated. He directed a, "Thanks, Kyubi," inwards before unsteadily getting to his feet, trudging in the direction of Kisame. Naruto was therefore taken entirely by surprise when Samahata was thrust into his side. The shark scales tearing into his flesh as Kisame bared his fangs and screamed slightly hysterically as he flung the grievously injured teen to the side. Naruto coughed up blood, feeling Kyubi's chakra working on his injuries as he stared up at the former mist ninja. "How did you survive?" he asked, feeling drained from overusage of the tailed beast's chakra. Kisame guffawed. "Brad D. Oh, you think you're the only ninja to know a clone technique and a substitution technique?" Kisame grinned as he stared down at the helpless-looking teen. "A water clone and a substitution, and whoops. Looks like I'm Ba." Kisame could utter no further words as the helpless ninja poofed into smoke. And a sword magically appeared in his throat. Naruto smirked on the other end of the blade, the safer end. As he clutched his heavily injured side and slid the blade free of his opponent's neck, falling to his knees in the same motion. Naruto vaguely hoped that Itachi would choose to not appear, but at that precise moment he heard an unmistakable voice call to him across the clearing. Forests nearby the Konohasuna border. Jiraiya panted as he, Kakashi and Guy rested, all 3 of them thorough. Lee worn out from over an hour's worth of hard running. Hard for them being deadly to most other ninjas, of course. Jiraiya quietly remarked to himself, within his own head, that the true could be said of the situation they found themselves in. Most ninja would turn tail and flee, or try to, if they caught sight of monsters the likes of Itachi or Kisame. But nope, he, Guy and Kakashi were determinedly running towards them. If only to try and save his godson. Jiraiya was fairly certain he could take down Itachi, and he knew that even if it came to a battle of attrition between himself and Kisame, he would win. But Naruto was still mostly untested. Jiraiya wished he could look the 2 Jonin in the eye and say that without a doubt his godson would take down the 4S rank ninja. But he was highly uncertain that Naruto could do so. Or at least for 2 out of the 3 he was uncertain. Jiraiya dismissed Deidara and Sasori, both were lightweights in the S-rank game. They were both incredibly dangerous. But only if you weren't at a solid S-rank level. He doubted that Kakashi or Guy would have trouble with them. But then he re-evaluated. Most likely, Kakashi and Guy were on the same level, and would have trouble. Oh well, Naruto certainly wasn't, and on a raw power scale Jiraiya was honestly certain the boy was a match for Jiraiya's sensei, the 3rd Hokage. He decided there was no more use in worrying about Naruto, but couldn't quite shake the pit of fear entirely. Some clearing crater, Konohasuna border. Well done, Naruto-kun. You've killed 3 of us. As Itachi walked on top of the small pond towards him, Naruto just stared at him tiredly. He had no energy left to fight. Both Hiranmaru and Zabumaru had reverted to their sealed forms at some point during the fight with Kisame. And he could feel them slumbering in his mind. The only options he had left were to unseal his other 2 swords, which he didn't feel like he had the power to do so at that point, or to call on enough of Kyubi's chakra to go into 4 tails mode and obliterate Itachi all at once. I'm sorry Naruto-kun, but I will be capturing you now. Itachi dashed forwards, grabbing Naruto by the throat and slamming him into a tree. Using the reflexive jerk of Naruto's head to unleash his Mangekyo. Naruto gasped, Itachi's eyes spinning, and he heard, as if from a long distance away, Itachi's voice. Tsukuyomi. And everything went black. Jiraiya gasped as he felt all sensation from the seal on his neck fade for a brief instant, and then return, immediately overshadowed by a gigantic swell of the Kyubi's chakra that left him so off-balance. Guy and Kakashi had to catch him before he crashed into a tree. Just as the 2 Jonin were about to question the older ninja, they felt a tremor in the ground. And far away they could see what must have been a truly gigantic explosion, and the feel of deadly chakra that they had last felt 15 years ago. Jiraiya was pale as he stared at the huge smoke cloud, left in the wake of the explosion. The 3 ninja tensed as they saw a blurred edge of air, and Jiraiya had enough time to shout, "Brace yourselves!" and anchor himself to the tree before the shockwave hit them, nearly blasting the trio right off of the sturdy, and now bent branch. "Oh Kami-sama no!" Naruto went 4 tails. Jiraiya breathed out. He looked wildly at the 2 Jonin, before gripping each of their shoulders tightly. Commanding them, "Listen to me, this is no longer a S-rank battle, this is Kage class, essentially Biju class, you 2 must head off the 2 relief teams, I am the only one in the village. Besides Tsunade, capable of entering these type of battles. And well, Naruto, but he's currently lost in the Kyubi's hate and anger, and I can't draw him out of that while GHTINGS rank ninjas and worrying about a few dozen lower ranked ninja. Run, go, do not let the others anywhere remotely close to this type of battle. Stay about a mile further away than this, I will send a toad to tell you when the coast is clear." Jiraiya stepped back, and Kakashi and Guy, after exchanging a brief set of looks, hastily saluted and leapt away, both of their forms rippling slight. Lias each activated the first gate in order to replenish their energy stores. Jiraiya watched them bound away, and nodded tightly to himself once, and then turned, drawing on a minuscule sliver of natural energy to replenish his own chakra, and popping a soldier pill before running full pace onwards. He had been going at half pace for the benefit of the 2 Jonin, and didn't really want to make him feel guilty for not being fast enough, when he had trained himself to the utmost alongside Naruto. Jiraiya didn't feel arrogant in claiming the spot of 3rd fastest ninja, second only to Naruto and the 3rd Raikage. He just hoped he would be fast enough to save a rampaging Naruto from the Akatsuki. 1 minute earlier, Naruto's mind. Naruto gasped as he felt himself strapped to a cross, spread-eagled, hands and legs bound. He could make out only a few small things in the gloom, one of which was Itachi, who seemed very odd and deadly looking in the blood-red moonlight. Red moonlight, he looked up as he thought, and blanched at the blood-red moon, the night sky entirely black. He looked back down, shouting at Itachi, reverting to old, familiar habits in his terror, knowing from Jiraiya's description that in a few short moments Itachi would begin his mind-breaking process. "Oi, Itachi you bastard, what the hell are you doing?" Itachi seemed singularly unimpressed by Naruto's rage. "This may be your mind, Naruto-kun. But I rule the Tsukuyomi. My jutsu, my rules. You will spend 72 hours in this realm. And each second will feel like an hour. Prepare yourself, Naruto-kun, it is futile to. Whatever else Itachi was going to say, was cut off, as even Naruto slumped and stopped struggling. He heard an odd, low groaning noise, followed by a creeping sensation that a gigantic predator was watching him. Naruto grinned, finally decided to wake up. He looked at Itachi, watching the ninja transition from calm and aloof to wary and watchful. Itachi actually jumped a little, and the entire top of the genjutsu, the whole sky, seemed to suddenly be pulled away, replaced by a gigantic oval of burning red fire. What is this, Naruto-kun? The Kyubi cannot enter this realm. Itachi was no longer calm, though he was not yet panicked. For someone without a Sharingan to actually break his Tsukuyomi, that would be unthinkable. No, he probably can't. But see, the thing is, Itachi. The Kyubi isn't the only thing in my head. Naruto smiled widely, and in the flickering, orange-red light, to Itachi the smile looked wholly sinister. As Naruto finished his sentence, the burning oval suddenly split apart. Itachi screamed, "Some crater, Konohasuna border." Itachi slumped as he backed away from Naruto, the team collapsing onto the ground, an odd sort of cackling coming from his throat before Naruto's head jerked up inhumanly quickly, eyes entirely red, and no pupil present. "Goodbye, Itachi," the voice said, and Itachi could not believe that voice was Naruto's as it was bass, deep and rumbling. And full of the sort of insane cackle Hidan would sometimes make. The end of the sentence was punctuated by an entirely sinister and creepy giggle, and Itachi shuddered, feeling. Gee, that not even Orochimaru's laugh could compare. Itachi had to leap back as the air seemed to swell with the Kyubi's chakra, the air tasting of blood and death as Naruto's form was completely covered in the miasma of death. Four tails whipping through the air. The Uchiha crouched, watching the storm of chakra swirl around the team, and then his eyes widened and he was leaping away, trying desperately to escape what he knew. What his Sharingan predicted would come. He tripped, falling to his knees even as he kept trying to stay even slightly ahead of the monstrously large explosion behind him. The very air seeming to catch on fire around Itachi as the ground shook beneath his feet, and it seemed like the day, 15 years in the past, when he was just 7 years old and had passed out from the sheer chakra presence of the Kyubi. More than 10 miles away. And its malice. Well, Itachi could handle that now, turning and trying to catch his breath. Having the Tsukuyomi broken like that had wreaked havoc on his vision, which now swam. But he suspected that was more due to the huge detonation of chakra behind him more than anything else. Itachi gazed down at the new crater blankly, hardly able to believe that Naruto with only 4 tails could unleash such devastation. Itachi sent a quick prayer to Kami-sama for the fact that Pain-sama would most likely take on the role of bringing in the Kyubi. Now that Itachi had had his partner killed before his very eyes. The Kyubi gazed at the puny human, a highly creepy and inhuman grin on his warped face. He was borrowing Naruto's body for the moment. The brat had exhausted himself carelessly using huge portions of his chakra trying to run to Gaara. And then the Gaki had further tired himself uselessly using his weaker pair of swords. This left only 2 options. Naruto burn himself out using this last sword and somehow try to evade the S-rank genocidal ninja he faced, or having the Kyubi take over, stressing Naruto's body further, but at least not taxing his chakra anymore. Kyubi twitched as he felt the chakra of his Kantainer's sensei rocketing closer. He knew he would have to take down Itachi quickly, before the old ninja returned control to Naruto. Naruto's puppeted body glowed momentarily, his eyes burning bright white in the middle of red and black as his mouth opened wide, wider than any human would open their jaws, unhinging and suddenly. A large ball of air sped in Itachi's direction. Shit, Itachi murmured, before utilizing the Shunshin to simply avoid the attack. He contemplated how he could possibly defeat Naruto's possessed form, and decided there was no real way to do it. Tsukuyomi wouldn't work at all on a Biju, he could probably just regenerate from the damage Amaterasu would do, Izanagi and Izanami would be of no help. And Susanoo would be of no help either, draining him of chakra too quickly, and his endgame sword of Totsuda wasn't meant of this type of capture mission, having a very final sealing process. Naruto's body limply moved, before suddenly tensing and leaping away, running on all fours towards the caught-off-guard Uchiha. Itachi raised his hands to block, feeling the blow King his reinforced limbs and throwing him bodily away. Itachi gasped as he watched the Kyubi start the process of making a Bijudama. There was no way he would be caught in that type of blast. That old kill him as surely as a knife through the ribs. Itachi started running, as fast as he could to get away from the attack. He did not run far enough by the time the ball had caught up with him. Kai watched the almost beam of assured death approach him almost in slow motion, Mangekyo Sharingan eyes spinning wildly as he calculated his chances of survival. He only had one option left. Close to the crater, Konohasuna border. Jiraiya rocked back and forth on his heels, feeling the similar buildup and release of energy that preceded and accompanied the charging and firing of a Bijudama, ground shaking enough to indicate the Kyubi had released it close to the ground and not higher up, where the shockwaves of the attack's passage wouldn't carve a trench into the ground. He watched, as far in the distance. The sky seemed to light up, the Bijudama exploding and no doubt at least bringing severe harm to the teen's opponents. Come to think of it, he couldn't feel anyone's chakra in the vicinity besides his own. Itachi's and the Kyubi's, which was currently drowning out Naruto's. Did that mean that Naruto had already disposed of or incapacitated 3 of the attacking team? If so, he was beyond proud of his student. If not, well, at least they wouldn't have to worry about Itachi anymore. As the smoke cleared, Jiraiya cursed himself, knowing that he had jinxed the results of the battle. As Itachi Uchiha was kneeling in an incredibly large crater, but he was still alive in the wake of a Bijudama. Jiraiya had watched Kushina use Bijudamas all the way up to 3 tails. He didn't want to imagine how powerful a 4-tail one was, and for Itachi to survive that, well, this would be a battle of cages, as he had said to Kakashi and Guy. Large crater, Konohasuna border. Edict. I didn't want to think about how much his body hurt. His eyes seemed to be crying blood without pause, because twice now in the same battle he had used a Mangekyo technique and had the same technique shattered within the same second of its use. His chakra was at the lowest it could be without him being actually dead. Every muscle ached and his arms felt suspiciously like they were at least fractured, if not broken. He shifted, and from the twinge of pain judged that they were fractured. That wasn't a whole lot better than broken, however, in his state. He had maybe enough chakra to pull off a C-ranked Kaden. After that, however, he would pass out and most likely die. This is madness, Itachi whispered to himself, as he slowly, neck protesting with every movement, brought his head up. He could see, at a clear distance of several dozen meters, thanks to his dojutsu, the Kyubi, looking at completely fresh as before. Itachi whimpered in some corner of his mind as the watched the Biju actually smirk. Body slowly rising as it prepared to launch another one of those damned Bijudama. He wouldn't survive this one, he knew. Itachi could maybe use his own life force to summon a Susanoo, and perhaps seal the Kyubi. But in doing so he would die. And if he didn't block, he would die. He couldn't move, he could barely keep himself from collapsing flat on his face from the sheer exhaustion. Itachi sent a prayer to Kami, that he would survive this battle. He heard a ripping noise, and as he turned to look, the world went black. Small crater, Konohasuna border. Jiraiya watched as Itachi seemed almost broken. Completely unable to move when even as a 13-year-old he had seemed like he would fight on par with Kakashi. And now, after fighting with Naruto for just a brief few moments, and after surviving a Bijudama. The boy, for he was no more than a child still, to Jiraiya, seemed at death's door. The Kyubi seemed ready to unleash another Bijudama, and as Jiraiya watched a man cloaked in an Akatsuki robe use some sort of jutsu to drag the young Uchiha away, Jiraiya judged that now was the time to act. He leapt down on top of the possessed Jinchuriki, and slapped down both palms on Naruto's back. Wincing as he felt the specially concocted cream on them start searing away from the incredibly caustic chakra of the Kyubis, and quickly sealed the Kyubi, tamping down the chakra for now. He leapt off of Naruto again as all of the chakra whisked away, leaving a groaning and blood-covered teen. Jiraiya frowned, quickly sending off a toad to tell Kakashi and Guy that it would be safe to come now. And to bring Sakura quickly. He knelt and gently picked up the young ninja, his own godson, cradling the young Uzumaki in his arms, his own face a mask of sorrow for the boy. Here, where there was no one to witness his pain, he let a single tear fall, lamenting that he could not keep his godson safe from the Akatsuki, and yet fiercely proud that Naruto could protect himself and his friends. Jiraiya quickly cleared a small space and set the teen back down on his back, smoothing the boy's hair, and who wasn't a child to him, an ancient war relic. Even Kakashi and Guy felt like children to him. And Naruto was even younger, barely 15 and already S rank. Jiraiya knelt next to Naruto, remembering their training trip, and felt a desperate rage inside of him at the thought of Naruto being captured. He knelt beside Naruto, the teen seeming to be at least peacefully resting, and felt that this is what it must feel like to have another son. Approaching the small crater, Konohasuna border, Kakashi panted, Guy next to him and not much better. The two Jonin had run from one extreme of the land of fire to the next, and to the two of them it felt entirely too much like third shinobi war for either of their comforts. Both have nodded at each other, secure in knowing that while Kakashi was in general more clever, and Guy more straightforward, they had both come to the conclusion that they needed to step up their training. Kakashi had, at one point, claimed the coveted S rank, before allowing taking on a genin team to mellow himself out, and Guy had never really tried for such a thing. But both swore they would retake or achieve it, and soon. Guy led a full squadron of Anbu and the rest of their former backup team, and Kakashi had raced onward with Sakura on his back. Knowing that Naruto must need medical help after fighting solo against 4 S-rank ninjas. Kakashi landed heavily, the long journeys taking their toll as he fell to his knees, Sakura gasping as she gave him a look. Before bounding over to the blood-covered Naruto, hands shaking as they tried to find out what was wrong with her teammate. Small crater, Konohasuna border. Jiraiya looked up, with concern as a visibly panting Kakashi carried Sakura into the crater before collapsing to his knees. He waved away Sakura's concern and directed the girl to Naruto, rising and walking over to the young Jonin. "What have you done to yourself, Kakashi?" he asked in concern. He hadn't realized the gap between himself and the Jonin had been this wide, to push the young ninja to the edge of exhaustion. No more than what needed to be done, Jiraiya-sama. Guy and I could barely keep up with your pace, and then we rushed to intercept the relief teams, and then I came on ahead with Sakura. But I owe it to Naruto to do that. If I'm not, and here Kakashi looked profoundly sad and disappointed in himself, if I'm not strong enough to protect or even assist Naruto, then the least I can do is help him recover more swiftly. Jiraiya frowned. He then patted Kakashi on his shoulder, and told the Jonin to at least lie down a bit. They would camp here for the night before returning to Konoha. None of them were in a condition to return to the village right then. He then looked up again as Guy and the rest of the relief teams landed, all of them looking awed at the vast swaths of devastation and the two huge craters. Left in the wake of a cage-class battle, Jiraiya quickly issued orders, getting the Anbu teams wrapped up in preparing tents, Team Guy preparing food, and Temari acting as Sakura's aide in case she needed anything while healing Naruto. He then sat down and waved at Guy to sit next to him, watching the younger man slump to the ground, even Guy's seemingly boundless energy sapped by the events of the day. "Rest, Guy. You and Kakashi worked the hardest out of all of us. Go to sleep early, and don't worry about shifts, the Anbu and I will take care of that." Jiraiya smiled reassuringly at the Jonin, who tiredly saluted, pushed himself to his feet, and tiredly trudged over to his tent. Next morning, small crater, Konohasuna border. Naruto groaned as he woke up, his ears ringing with the solid hour-long lecture given to him by Zangetsu and Hirinmaru, about overusing his powers and that now someone existed who knew about the majority of them, when he had been secretive for so long. He had then had to endure a lecture from the Kyubi about knowing his limits, and since when did the giant furball care about that? Since recently, brat. I'd much rather be street UCK inside of you than used for whatever harebrained scheme Akatsuki wants me for. I'd rather be tearing your corpse apart and setting your precious village on fire than be sealed inside of you, but I'll take what I can get for now. And I can't enjoy that if you go off and overstress your body and force me to step in for you. Zangetsu had let him off with one final warning. Don't go overboard for the next few days. He is still grumpy about being awoken, and next time you might have to learn your Bankai early if he wakes up again. Naruto slowly sat up. Inside of a large canvas tent, he groaned. Ed softly as he staggered out of the tent, and beheld a small, cozy-looking campsite. He spotted an Anbu, and waved. The Anbu turned and waved, then stilled. He suddenly seemed to split down the middle, and with a smirk playing across his lips, tongue sliding out, Orochimaru stepped out of the halves. Naruto saw red. Naruto clenched his teeth. It was obvious that no one else had sensed Orochimaru, from the lack of jutsu exploding form tense. So it was just him for now. He could feel that his body was not yet ready to handle channeling the Kyubi's chakra after the intense and extreme level he had to use it to survive clashing with 4 Akatsuki members. This plus the way his Reiatsu was depleted meant that he had to rely on just his own power for the battle, as he wouldn't be able to see all on much more than just the zanpakutos themselves, not having recovered sufficiently to even use a single shikai. Naruto smirked. His own power would be sufficient for this. Orochimaru seemed amused by Naruto's confidence. Kukuku. Naruto-kun, I see you've grown stronger. But all of this destruction was obviously caused by the Kyubi. Maybe Sasuke really is stronger than you. How disappointing. Naruto's smirk slowly morphed into a fierce scowl. I have trained too hard for this, Orochimaru. Tell me where you've kept Sasuke. The traitorous Sannin smiled, his tongue sliding out to lick his lips. Kukuku. Naruto-kun, I don't think I'll tell you. Instead, I think I'll capture you. Naruto's eyes shone bright blue as chakra seemed to glow around his body, his clothes flapping in the breeze whipped up by the teen's swirling power. If you won't tell me where Sasuke is, I'll just have to beat it out of you. The teen leapt forward as the Sannin leapt backwards. Naruto's right hand pulled backwards as he charged up a Rasengan. In 2 seconds it had formed, and he thrust it forward at Orochimaru's face, catching the man off guard as he hadn't expected Naruto to be able to form the technique without a shadow clone. The Rasengan crashed into Orochimaru, drilling straight through his head, which disintegrated into mud. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise as he thought, mud clone. The teen spun towards the forest, eyes frantically trying to spot the ex-Sannin. As he spotted the man walking out from behind a pair of trees, Naruto called out to the older ninja. Scared of little ol' me, Orochimaru? I thought you'd be capable of taking on a ninja of my caliber. Orochimaru's grin seemed frozen. You're 100 years too early to be trash-talking with me, Naruto-kun. Naruto grinned. Care to back that up? I've been itching to try out this new technique. Naruto swept both of his hands out to his sides, well away from his body. Chakra seemed to almost explode with intensity as it swirled in his palms. The very air seemed to be pressing down on Orochimaru, and the man wondered why none of the other ninja had woken up yet. All other thoughts were swept from the Otokage's mind as twine Rasengan formed in Naruto's palms. But the chakra didn't seem to be done just yet, as it continued to spin, faster and faster. You're a fool if you think I'll let you complete that technique, whatever it is, Naruto-kun. And fools die on the battlefield. Orochimaru leapt forwards to interrupt Naruto's technique, but just as he spat the Kusanagi out, he was beset by twin Naruto clones, both holding a Rasengan in each hand. Orochimaru danced for a few seconds with the 2 clones, all 3 combatants well aware of a keening noise behind them as whatever it was that Naruto was charging got stronger and stronger. One clone struck out, with Orochimaru bending out of the way just in time, as the clones were surprisingly swift. The Rasengan obliterated a tree, but the rest of the branches fell on the clone, dispersing it and causing the other Rasengan it held to also explode. The last clone and Orochimaru managed to barely escape the blast radius in time, the clone looking than KFUL and Orochimaru looking highly shocked. This is the Kyubi brat. How has he grown so strong? Sasuke isn't even close to him. The snake Sannin had to dodge out of the way as he was again attacked by the Naruto clone, who then seemed to commit suicide by spontaneously impaling itself on the Kusanagi. Orochimaru had enough time to frown before both Rasengan the clone had been wielding exploded on either side of the former Sannin, obscuring him from sight for a few seconds. When the smoke and dust settled, Orochimaru emerged relatively unscratched. His clothes seemed to be frayed, but besides that, he was unharmed. He theorized that the Rasengans had not been directed, and had merely exploded mostly in a sphere rather than on his person. The Sannin looked towards the middle of the camp just in time for Naruto's technique to be completed. Naruto grinned as he felt the Rasengans twist into their new shape. He hefted the oddly shuriken-shaped Rasengans, proudly explaining, "What the fu? RTH Hokage and Jiraiya-sensei couldn't do, I did. I have completed the Rasengan. Now, face my power, Orochimaru." The twin Rasengan seemed to have a small shuriken made out of white chakra spinning around their centers, and gave off a high-pitched but low-volume keening noise. The genin disappeared, and Orochimaru had barely enough time to utter an expletive before both enhanced Rasengans slammed into him. The force of the attack now multiplied even higher by the addition of wind-natured chakra. Naruto watched as the Rasengans seemed to grind into the Sannin before the man was consumed by a large explosion. As Naruto looked back, he saw that his fellow ninja had finally woken up. The teen casually created 2 more futon Rasengans, as he had added the build-up more for Orochimaru's benefit, and used one of them to clear away the dust cloud. Jiraiya sleepily yawned behind him, as did the other ninjas. "Naruto, as much as I appreciate the alarm clock, can you not practice S-rank jutsu in the middle of the camp?" Naruto rolled his eyes, using the existing wind-enhanced Rasengan to point out the extremely pissed and battered-looking Orochimaru. "I think I had a good reason, Ero-sensei." Naruto smirked, turning to face the snake Sannin, who had opened his mouth as far as he could, the jaw unhinging with twin cracks that made everyone present wince. Orochimaru completed his skin-shedding technique, leaping out of the disintegrating mouth. His eyes seemed impossibly cold, and his lips were curled into a snarl. The assembled ninjas gulped, swallowing down their fear at the sight of the naked rage in the Rouge S-rank ninja's eyes. Naruto swept his unoccupied hand out, motioning for the others to stay back. The teen's face seemed to exceed the Sannin's in sheer coldness, seeming to be carved from a glacier. "No, leave him to me." Everyone looked to Jiraiya, who nodded his head and took a step back. The Anbu immediately stepped back as well, with Kakashi and Guy tightening their stances. Not entirely convinced Naruto could take on Orochimaru without the help of the Kyubi. The members of the Rookie 11 that were there refused to budge from their positions, wanting to help Naruto, but unable to see how they would be of any use either. Naruto grinned at Orochimaru, holding his hand out mockingly. "I'll give you one last chance, Orochimaru. Tell me where Sasuke is, and I won. Have to hurt you any more than I already have." The Sannin's face contorted into a rictus of fury as he stabbed forwards at Naruto, the Kusanagi instantly lengthening in response to its master's order. The sword speared out at the Jinchuriki, who simply reached out with his suddenly occupied hand, deflecting the strike into the forest with a Rasengan. The wind-enhanced Rasengan was then thrust forwards. Orochimaru, now well aware of how damaging the attack was, dodged to the side and backwards, skidding into a tree. The Kusanagi shortened to its original length, then burst forwards again, spearing out at Naruto rapidly. The teen slapped the blade away again with his normal Rasengan, then, pumping chakra into his legs, blurred forwards, briefly disappearing from sight as he buried the futon Rasengan into Orochimaru's gut. Another explosion followed, swallowing the snake Sannin yet again. Naruto hopped backwards, summoning forth 4 clones. All 4 formed futon Rasengans and 2 dashed forwards, meeting the former Leaf Nin sword for Rasengan, jutsu warring against ancient steel. Naruto held out both of his hands, Rasengan forming in an instant as the 2 clones slammed their futon Rasengans into his normal ones. Naruto grit his teeth as the whine kicked up a notch, the Anbu and Kakashi wincing as their more sensitive senses ached at the keening noise. Orochimaru panted as he fought to keep both clones in his field of vision at all times. The blasted things had formed more Rasengans, and now wielded 1 normal and 1 wind-natured each. With their sheer speed and ferocity, he realized exactly how much Naruto had set up the previous version of this matchup. Now that Naruto was genuinely trying to buy time for him to complete whatever technique he had thought up mid-battle. The 2 clones were after him constantly, barely giving him room to think. But Orochimaru wasn't a certified genius for nothing. Unfortunately, Orochimaru's genius-level intellect was not quite at the level of the Nara's. So not even he could come up with a plan that extended beyond, kill the clones. Suddenly the keening reached a new pitch. He spared an instant to take a quick look at Original to see the boy holding 2 Rasengans in each hand, all 4 flickering with wind chakra. The 2 clones he was facing abruptly dispersed, leaving the snake Sannin to yet again be in the middle of exploding Rasengans. As Naruto looked up, having completed his new technique, 2 Rasengans and 2 futon Rasengans combined together, he grinned, and sped forwards, barely GV-ing Orochimaru the time to think before plunging the incredibly unstable, oversized Rasengan into the man's stomach. Udama Rasengan. The teen shouted as the extremely large Rasengan seemed to detonate with far more force than would be expected. The other ninjas behind him unable to see due to the intense light shining from the remnants of the explosion. Undisclosed location. Itachi wearily opened his eyes, feeling a throbbing ache throughout his entire body. He could barely believe that he had survived the sheer and overwhelming force of nearly the 4-tailed version of the Kyubi. Had it not been for Toby, he surely would have died. The S-rank ninja slowly moved his head to the side as a shadow fell across his face. He could barely make out the bright orange hair of the leader of Akatsuki. Itachi, you have now fought the Kyubi Jinchuriki twice. Tell me, how powerful is he? Pain's gravelly voice distracted Itachi from his thoughts on how utterly terrifying the visage of a Kyubi-possessed Naruto was. Itachi closed his overstressed eyes as he spoke softly. The first time could not even be called a battle due to my foolish little brother interfering. Back then Uzumaki seemed perfectly capable of calling on the Kyubi's chakra. And now he is very adept. As far as power, using the Kyubi's chakra he slew Kisame. Was Toby able to retrieve any of their bodies? Pain intoned the word no before leaving the room. I'll leave you to recover. Itachi. Itachi's eyes flew open as he jerked upright on the bed, a strangled noise coming from his throat. Leader. Wait. Pain looked back, surprised at the ear he could sense in the Uchiha's voice. What is it? What could cause you to fear? Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan stared straight into Pain's Rinnegan, fear visible to his fellow S-rank ninja. Itachi spoke hurriedly, his sudden exertion exhausting him greatly. Uzumaki has some being of incredible power living inside his mind, even more powerful than the Kyubi. It was able to break my Tsukuyomi. Random crater. Konohasuna border. As the smoke cleared, the Leaf Ninja gasped as they stared at the huge trench left behind by the much more powerful Rasengan. Naruto stood above it, looking down at the broken body of Orochimaru. The teen's eyes seemed to burn with power, and the assembled ninjas suddenly felt as if the air itself was pressing down on them. Kakashi was surprised, yet again, to feel how powerful Naruto was. This much chakra pressure, at such a young age, he truly is the son of his parents. Minato-sensei, how proud would you be of your son if you could see him now? Kak. Ashi was snapped out of his internal musing by a sudden sound like choking coming from Naruto. He looked at the young ninja in surprise as he and everyone else shouted with shock. The Kusanagi was RCED straight through Naruto's left lung. Naruto's face slackened with surprise and shock as he barely managed to deflect the sword that had screamed towards his heart into his lung. Naruto coughed up blood as he could feel the Kyubi's chakra burning his chakra coils as it fought the poison coating the Kusanagi's blade. He could hear his zanpakutos shouting at him in his foolishness, but all he focus on was Orochimaru's leering face through the smoke, and the sword in his chest, eerily reminding Naruto of Sasuke stabbing him in the past with the Chidori. Naruto's eyes blazed with chakra as he lunged forwards, both hands slamming Rasengans into Orochimaru's chest even as blood spurted from his wound and from his mouth. The suddenness of the attack caught the snake Sannin off guard, catapulting him into the trees and tearing the sword out of Naruto, making him collapse briefly to the ground. Naruto stood back up, wind-enhanced Rasengans bursting into existence in his palms, face furious as he realized his error. Naruto could feel the Kyubi's chakra working furiously inside him to fight off the poison, grinning grimly as he could feel that it was a losing battle. If he had to die, then well, at least make it a good death. Orochimaru coughed as, yet again, he could feel the grind of the Rasengans taking its toll on his body. He had expected the Kyubi container to be strong, yes, but not this strong. He had expected Jiraiya to run off without the boy, and do whatever, spying or peeping, not train the boy into the ground. Because it was obvious just looking at the teen, at least. From a S-rank ninja's perspective, that the boy was stronger than he appeared, and was either very close to S rank or S rank already in terms of strength. Plus someone had beaten some smarts into Uzumaki. Time to make a tactical retreat, and call the boy close to his lair. As Naruto closed in on the snake Sannin again, he skid to a halt as the man began laughing. Kukuku, Naruto-kun, I see you have grown strong. Maybe even strong enough to fight Sasuke. Come to the Bridge of Earth and Fire in 2 weeks, and you might have a surprise waiting for you. The Sannin took Naruto's momentary hesitation to withdraw with all speed, all too conscious of the incredibly angry Jiraiya and Kakashi, whose Rasengan and Reikiri crashed into the ground. He had disappeared into scant milliseconds after his departure. Naruto took this moment to collapse bonelessly to the ground, veins burning with poison and chakra coils burning with the Kyubi's chakra. Naruto could hear his teammates and fellow ninja clamoring over him. And he could feel Lee and Guy carry him close to the fire, Sakura's chakra working feverishly, trying to extract the poison. Naruto closed his eyes, knowing it was futile. He could already feel a deep coldness in his body as his vision darkened. Kakashi could hardly believe his eyes. Naruto had managed to go toe-to-toe with Orochimaru, yet unfortunately the younger ninja was still inexperienced. And had been caught off guard. He watched, nervous with a desperate fervor as Sakura worked, barking orders to the Anbu to fetch water and get some clean pieces of cloth. Quickly instructing Kakashi as well to light a hot fire. Each of the ninja in the camp hurried to their assigned tasks, well aware that Sakura was the only ninja at hand that could save Naruto. Tsunade several hours hard running away. Temari hovered over Gaara, unsure how to help, but not wanting to leave her brother's side, who still hadn't woken up. Sakura took notice and gave Temari a small pot of water and a rag, telling her to keep calm and just continue refreshing the wet rag on Gaara's head, and not to worry, she had enough assistance to get Naruto better. Except, as the minutes crawled by, and Sakura ate first one soldier pill, then two, with no visible improvement in Naruto's state, the assorted ninja began to worry. They had already seen the perspiration coating Naruto's body, and they watched as it seemed to increase. Jiraiya had even felt Naruto's chakra, asking Neji to aid him, and both had proclaimed that the Kyubi seemed to be working just as hard as Sakura in attempting to remove the poison from its host's body. Within Naruto's skull, however, a different battle was taking place. The Kyubi was quiet, entirely focused on curing his jailer. He might not like the little brat, but the boy was a good deal better than any of his other hosts, and it would be much easier and more comfortable inside his current one, and not in the clutches of the Akatsuki. However, as much as Kyubi wanted to flood Naruto's body with his chakra, burning out the poison, that would have the opposite effect and kill Naruto from a severe overdose of demonic chakra. So he kept ending focused pulses of chakra to affected areas, but with the amount of chakra reduced to mere pinpricks, he couldn't do much good. Naruto's zanpakuto spirits, on the other hand, had entered a furious debate, their wielder lying face up in the water next to them. They had spent 5 minutes variously begging and trying to convince the boy not to give up, but it seemed that Naruto's mind had retreated deeper into his consciousness, leaving only an empty shell. So they, Zangetsu, Zabumaru and Hyarinmaru, now debated the wisdom in waking Ryujin Jaka, hoping that the ancient fire dragon would have the means to cure Naruto. Being several times more ancient than all of the others put together. He needs to be woken, Hyarinmaru. That Sakura girl might be talented, but this poison is something else. If Naruto hadn't needed to use the Kyubi's power yesterday, this might already be a moot point. I don't think so, Zangetsu. Why don't we wait a little longer? You know how cranky he gets when he isn't woken for a battle. Hyarinmaru had coiled upon himself multiple times, but he would fiercely deny any tremors along his body. He was made of ice, for Kami's sake. A dragon made of fire so powerful its Shikai nearly made it impossible to use. His glacial powers made the ice dragon distinctly uneasy. Bad enough when they had separate wielders millennia ago, but now that they were in the same person, The argument was cut short when a wall of heat rolled over the two arguing sword spirits. They looked up, watching Zabumaru walking towards them, his face looking as dry as they had seen it. Both faces. While you two are arguing, Naruto is dying. So I went and woke up Ryujin Jaka. He gave a flat look to the mildly horrified looks of the other two. Even after millennia of being wielded by one of the most powerful humans to walk the worlds, Zangetsu would still get frightened by the raw power of the greatest elemental sword spirit, and well, for Hirenmaru, the fear was justified. Naruto's mindscape shook as a roar so loud it made Kyubi look up, expecting another Biju coming to fight him echoed. And then the space in front of Kyubi's cell was aflame. Sakura tried to not let the tears fall, but they slowly worked their way down her face regardless. She could feel Naruto's cells dying under her hands, and no matter how much she and the Kyubi fought, too much of the poison had entered and spread throughout Naruto's body. Unless someone could literally set Naruto's body on fire from within, and burn out the poison, she didn't see how Naruto would live. To her ever-enduring astonishment, it seemed like Naruto's body heard her thoughts as it promptly burst into flame. What's happening? Cries of shock came from the other ninjas, and one of the Anbu was halfway Hiro completing a water bullet technique when Jiraiya calmly punched him in the chest, nullifying the man's chakra for a brief second and disrupting his jutsu. I apologize, Anbu-san, but no, this is Naruto's last sword. His most powerful. Naruto-kun's sword sets him on fire. Lee looked confused as he scratched his head, voicing the doubts everyone had about the Toad Sanin's statement. Yes, Lee-kun, at least, when it is curing Naruto of poisons it can. Call it an emergency protection. Naruto should be fine once that fire dies down. Jiraiya calmly met each of the younger ninjas' eyes, communicating to them via his body language his utter certainty that Naruto would heal. Jiraiya motioned to the logs around the campfire. Come, sit, there's nothing we can do anymore. If Akira and the Kyubi combined could not defeat that damnable poison, then there isn't a whole lot the rest of us can do. The other ninjas gradually and grudgingly sat down, twitching every time the fire burning around Naruto's body crackled, hissed or spat sparks. The other Zanpakuto would have said that Ryujin Jaka's eyes blazed with anger, but his entire body did, burning a bright and blinding white as the immense dragon made of pure fire burned away every last bit of the poison in Naruto's body, trusting that the Kyubi would be able to heal the wounded cells left behind. It took 2 minutes, and each of the other sword spirits held their breath, not that they needed to breathe, but this still held their breaths as more and more heat rolled off of Ryujin Jaka, quickly evaporating the sewer water and turning the cell into a sauna. But finally, Ryujin Jaka powered and calmed down, the blinding white fire cooling substantially to a bright, but much dimmer red fire, that being the dragon's normal coloration. It is done. The deep, bass rumble of the ancient dragon's voice boomed in the small space, making Zabumaru and Zangetsu flinch as the bass actually shook their forms. Lee, tell Naruto to not get into this sort of mess again, or I am liable to melt his flesh off his bones in our next sparring match. Good day. And with that threatening statement, the massive presence of the fire dragon disappeared, returning to its section of Naruto's mind, sending a roiling blast of pure heat at Naruto, waking the teen up from whatever deep trance he had fallen into. Naruto awoke with a start, looking around wildly and firing off questions. What happened? Why is all the sewer water gone? Why are you all clustered around me? He looked up into the suspiciously wet eyes of Zabumaru and Zangetsu, and diamond dust-coated eyes of Hirenmaru. Naruto, you gave up on life. What happened to your indomitable will? What happened to your endless spirit? How could you do that to us? To your friends? To your Shisho? Zangetsu's voice shook as he spoke the word, us, and Naruto frowned, confused. What do you mean I gave up? I've been fighting this whole time. I kept calling and no one would answer me. Eventually I managed to get a hold of Ryujin Jaka, but all he did was roar and tell me to go away. Kyubi intervened before Zabumaru or Zangetsu could retort. Brat, what did the place you were in look like? Naruto looked up into the surprisingly tired face of the nine-tailed demon, frowning. I don't know. I think it had a small puddle, and it was all white otherwise. If that little puddle of water hadn't been there I wouldn't have been able to tell which way was up or down. Kyubi grimaced. Somehow you accessed one of the deeper levels of my consciousness then. Don't ask me how, he snapped, seeing Naruto drawing breath to do exactly that. I don't know how you got there, but I do know what you're going to be doing after this. Recovering. Muck. More of my chakra and your entire chakra network would have been overloaded to the point of death. Try not to do that again. Kyubi smirked at Naruto's open-mouthed look of shock. Zabumaru nudged Naruto. I think you should wake up now. Your friends and allies are probably very worried. Naruto slowly opened his eyes, then quickly clenched them shut again, blinded by a wall of bright white light. He tried again, even more slowly, letting his pupils become accustomed to the light. He looked around, and sighed in relief when realized he was in the Konoha hospital. The team started when Tsunade suddenly started speaking beside him, giving him a stern look. Gaki, don't do something that stupid again, or I'll tie you to this bed the next time. Your entire body was nearly overloaded by both that fire and the Kyubi's chakra. On top of dealing with that poison. Any longer and you would have died. Naruto grimaced, and nodded his head in understanding. When can I leave again, Tsunade-ba-chan? Tsunade frowned. As much as I would like to keep you here for another few days, you seem to have healed fully. Not surprising, given it's been a day since you were brought back. You'll be really ved to know that Gaara also suffered no real injury, only having to deal with a mild bout of chakra exhaustion, which you Jinchuriki recover easily from. He wanted to convey his thanks, and his mild irritation at the fact that he owes yet another debt to you, for saving his life once again. I'm going to let you go, Naruto, but no strenuous training for at least a day, got it? Naruto gulped. Got it, ba-chan. Naruto had spent several hours a day inside his mental world, sparring with the manifestations of his swords, and attempting to master their respective Shikais and Bankai, with some dling tossed in for trying to master Ryujin Jaka's Bankai form, to no avail. Of course, thanks to his mental landscape and time flow being different from the real world, what was about 5 hours in his mind equated to about 30 minutes in the real world. Naruto grinned to himself, being able to feel the sudden increase in both his Reiatsu and chakra since drawing them both nearly dry in his battle against the Akatsuki and Orochimaru. This meant that not only would he be closer to having enough Reiatsu to actually activate Ryujin Jaka's Bankai, but he also had even more chakra to toss at any of his opponents. The teen absently spun a Rasengan into existence, noting that his chakra control was still perfect despite the increase in chakra, and dispersed the orb, sucking most of the chakra back into his coils. Naruto looked up at the sky, noting the time of day by the sun's height. Better get to the team training session. Naruto smirked, blurring away in the direction of the village. Having traveled to a remote training ground, which was yet again littered with craters from his experiments with creating a stable, one-handed wind-natured Udama Rasengan. He had found that, roughly 50% of the time, he overloaded the Rasengan, the power vastly outstripping his control over its shape, and thus detonating, which is why he had done most of the experiments with clones after the second explosion. The wind chakra made the Rasengan even more volatile than normal, and Naruto had witnessed Kyubi chakra actually coming off his hand in wisps the 2 times the augmented attack had exploded in his palm, obviously healing whatever damage he had sustained. Naruto's eyes shone as he reveled in what was now essentially jutsu progression taken to such an extreme that it became jutsu creation. Taking an existing jutsu and expanding it into something completely different. Training Ground 7. Sakura looked up at the sky, squinting at the sun, trying to determine if Kakashi-sensei would come sometime this century or not. And if Naruto would deign to join them as well. Typical. I'm the first one here. A voice rumbled from beside her, when there definitely had not been another person beside her a second ago. Not quite. Girly. Sakura whipped around, fist rising, a perfect backhand about to send whomever had sneaked up on her into the next week when her fist was caught with no issue by her mentor. The excess chakra needed for Tsunade's super strength technique that Sakura had learned dissipating as Tsunade smirked, Jiraiya and the rest of the Rookie 11 and their senseis next to her. Careful, Sakura. Anyone not A rank or higher would have been paced if that had connected. Sakura frowned at Guy giving her taijutsu advice as Tsunade dropped her student's hand and motioned for Sakura to come closer. The Godime Hokage stood near the memorial stone, lightly brushing her hand across its surface, memories bubbling underneath the surface for a brief second before she turned away and dropped her hand to her side. Tsunade addressed them all. A few days ago, Naruto saved Gaara, the Godime Cage of Suna. In the process, he came across 4 Akatsuki members and Orochimaru. It is confirmed that Naruto was able to kill 3 of the 4 Akatsuki, the 4th, Itachi Uchiha being the only one to escape, and when Orochimaru attacked the day after, Naruto drove him off again, although not without grave injuries. Orochimaru asked Naruto to see him at the Bridge of Earth and Fire to talk about Sasuke, and I am obviously not sending him alone without backup. Any preferences, Naruto? Tsunade looked up as she finished her sentence, Naruto hanging from a tree branch. The teen mused for a second. Can I bring everyone here? Tsunade frowned. Ideally, yes, but as far as functionality, no. It needs to be a small but powerful team, capable of taking on the Sannin. You can take no more than 2 Jonin-senseis. Naruto dropped to the ground, stroking his chin. In that case, I'll take Neji, Kaka-sensei, Asuma-sensei and Shikamaru. Oh, and Sakura. Naruto turned to face Tsunade. How's that sound? Tsunade nodded. Perfect. That way you have all ranges covered, 2 strategists, a medic and a Hyuga. Okay, all of you mentioned, you have a week to gear up and rest. You're being taken off the active roster for this, an S-rank retrieval mission that has an S-rank combat portion included. Naruto will be team leader, as Kakashi, Asuma and Neji will judge his leadership capabilities and give me their recommendation for if Naruto deserves Chunin rank. The 3 Jonin named nodded. Naruto grinned. Great, now time for some ramen. His sudden takeoff was arrested by Tsunade reaching out to grab his collar. Not so fast, kid. Spar against each of your teammates first. So we get an accurate gauge of your skills. And only your skills, nothing extra. Naruto and the ninja that had been on the backup mission have Tsunade a glance, not sure if the fact that Naruto had driven off Orochimaru and killed 3 Akatsuki members had been communicated to Tsunade. The Hokage sighed. Yes, I'm aware that Naruto is apparently an S-rank ninja. Now get on with it. Go full power, you have a week to recover. Sakura versus Naruto first. Naruto flash stepped over to the clearing, lamenting the grass that was about to be destroyed shortly. Sakura followed, nervously fingering a kunai. What could she possibly know? Better not think of that. Naruto, now fully recovered from his ordeals, let a bit of his chakra pressure loose. The air gained a hint of his power as he grinned, bending his knees slightly as he watched Sakura do the same. He could feel that she kept her chakra tightly leashed to the point where she felt like a civilian. Naruto mused that he might do that, if he ever had a need to. Go. Kakashi snapped the word out like an order, and his 2 students obeyed, kunai and shuriken resembling blurs of steel more than actual objects as the 2 teens flung dozens of the weapons at each other. Those watching saw as gradually, Sakura gained small nicks and cuts, but not a single one of Sakura's own weapons pierced Naruto's guard. The ground shook as Naruto suddenly leapt up into the air, a faint shout reaching the ears of the watchers and his opponent. Kinton, Goryu, and 5 dragons roared out of the sky, straight down at Sakura. Her eyes widened, panicking as she was now on the opposite side of the attack, leaping away just in time, but being consumed by the explosion of dust and debris. As she emerged from the cloud, she doubled over to the shock of the onlookers. The reason for it being revealed as a mild genjutsu fell away and everyone could see Naruto's fist buried in Sakura's gut. Hey, idiot! Sakura wound up, punching as hard as she could. Shock on her face as Naruto blocked the blow, then countered with another of his own, the punch now lifting Sakura into the air slightly from the force of it, and then kicking her through the cloud and out the other side. Finish, Tsunade called as she rushed over to Sakura, hands glowing green with medical chakra as she worked on healing her students' injuries. Naruto pointed at Shikamaru, grinning. I forfeit against him. All right, Neji, let's dance. Shikamaru scoffed slightly as Neji smirked, walking up to Naruto, closing his eyes as he focused. Naruto grinned wider, letting his chakra loose even more, the air shivering. Eyes shining as he felt Neji raise his own chakra pressure, the 2 teens just staring at each other for a few moments before Neji opened up the fight with 2 short seal chains. Slapping his hands down on the ground. Doden. Doryuden no Jutsu. A medium-sized dragon of mud leapt out at Naruto, maw opened wide to bite the Jinchuriki in half. Naruto merely smirked, holding up his hand, a much larger dragon of mud shooting out of the earth kanji on his pinky finger, instantly obliterating the Hyuga's smaller dragon. Neji simply smiled, his hands clasped head together as he unleashed the next attack. Kaden. Karyudan. The fire dragon blasted straight through Naruto's mud dragon, heading towards the younger ninja, who laughed as he disappeared. Not bad, Neji. Naruto cackled as he closed in on Neji, the two teens exchanging a number of blows, Naruto holding back his true strength and Neji holding back his Juken, both testing the other to see their technical skill. Within a few exchanges, Naruto could feel that the Hyuga still had the upper hand in taijutsu, having a longer and more focused time spent in that area. He leapt backwards as Neji AC evaded his Byakugan with a spike of chakra. Byakugan. Hake Kusho. Neji thrust his palm out, a barely visible warping of the air, enough signal to Naruto to get out of the way. But Naruto stayed within the attack, wanting to see how far Neji had come. The vacuum wave hit him, blasting the teen backwards and crashing him into the forest. The force of the attack actually smashed Naruto through several trees before slamming him hard into a fifth, cracking the old tree and sending it toppling over. Naruto groaned as he reconsidered his decision to let the attack hit, taking a moment to take his bearings. Looking up just in time to see another vacuum wave about to hit. This time Naruto blurred out of the way, not about to eat another one of those attacks. Time to end this. Naruto spent a split second making his decision on how to end the match, then decided on the shock and awe method, utilizing a second to make a platform under his feet in the air to launch himself upwards, grinning. As he realized his chakra platforms were now almost as solid as his Reiatsu ones. Naruto looked down at Neji, holding out his hand, grinning at the expression on Neji's face as he released his attack. Kinton. Goryu. The five dragons screamed out at the Hyuga, Neji's eyes starting to ache from the prolonged time staring at Naruto's now much larger and brighter chakra system. Neji gritted his teeth, knowing that he wouldn't win this match as he spun into a Kaden, all five dragons detonating as they collided with his chakra shield. The explosion slapped Neji out of his position, destroying his Kaden and knocking him unconscious as he crashed back into the ground. Sakura ran over to heal Neji as Tsunade took care of Naruto, the Jinchuriki rolling his shoulders. Well, now that I'm warmed up, who's next, Asuma-sensei? Most of the Rookie 11 that had not been on the backup mission a few days previous, and thus had not witnessed Naruto go toe-to-toe with the snake Sannin gaped at the teen. Unsure how he thought he could take out Asuma, even with the obvious power upgrade he had undergone. Because while Neji was also a Jonin, there was still a difference in power between the young Hyuga and Asuma Sarutobi. A former member of the 12 Guardians. Asuma's own face, however, was a mask. He glanced swiftly at Kakashi, who twitched his fingers slightly in a motion that the Konoha Jonin knew to mean, go all out. Asuma flicked his own fingers in acknowledgement, mentally gearing himself up, loosening his tight control over his chakra, letting it flare as he looked Naruto dead in the eyes. Yes, I think I'll go next. Naruto-kun. Naruto simply grinned, tossing a quick thanks to Tsunade as he bounded towards the now empty of grass and crated clearing. Asuma walked over, gradually letting his chakra flare higher and higher, the chakra pressure practically making the air shake from it as Asuma wound up for one of his first serious matches in a while. Naruto smiled, rising his own pressure to match. The onlookers, now clearly able to feel the chakra in the air, and to the more sensitive, could practically taste it. Asuma and Naruto stared at each other for a bit longer. Asuma recoiled slightly as Naruto roared at him, lacing the sound with chakra, creating a visible shock wave directed at the older ninja, ratcheting up his own chakra presence massively, letting it shine like a giant beacon to everyone as he attacked with a simple right hook to start, the ground cratering under his feet as he leapt forward. Asuma had a brief second of shock, not expecting the sudden berserker-like attack from Naruto, who had acted so calm and collected so far. Nonetheless, Asuma was not a high A-rank ninja for nothing. He sped away from where he had been standing, his body aiming to blur in the eyes of everyone present, except for the S-rank ninjas. Unfortunately, Naruto was one of them, and he dashed forward to meet Asuma, the two ninjas spending a brief handful of seconds in taijutsu combat. Dust flying from every clash, Asuma's chakra coming off of his body in small wisps, and Naruto's actually coiling around him, a testament to the sheer amount of chakra that the Teen possessed that he could waste such flagrant amounts of chakra on an intimidation tactic. Asuma chuckled in some corner of his mind, well aware that already, he was no match for the younger ninja. Naruto having progressed in leaps and bounds ahead of pretty much everyone here, and it was no wonder, with the likes of his enemies. He hoped that he hadn't fallen so behind, however, to lose to Naruto as restricted as he was. Either way, he resolved to step up his training, as well as that of Team Asuma's. Asuma grunted as one of Naruto's punches slipped past his guard to land solidly on his torso, sending him skidding back. Both of them had now felt out the other, letting Asuma remove the last bits of his reservations as he sent his chakra pressure as high as he could, killing intent flood. Ing the training ground as he focused to his utmost. Hachiman, Kaiman, Kai. Asuma's chakra spiked as he released the first of the 8 inner gates, surprising all but 2 of the onlookers, Gai Havi. Ing taught his fellow Jonin the skill in Tsunade, having patched up Asuma's wounds in the training. Asuma slipped his specialized knives from their sheaths, glad that he had thought to train with Yusen. His much increased chakra with his wind nature ahead of time, otherwise this would have been a short battle. Wind-natured chakra hummed to life over his knives as he dashed towards Naruto. Naruto ha! Been caught off guard by Asuma's gate opening, and subsequent uptick in speed as he took a punch to the stomach, instantly having a large amount of internal damage applied to him by the wind-enhanced chakra knives. Asuma looked on in horror as Naruto coughed up blood, frozen like everyone else as Naruto retched, coughing up more blood before laughing. Ha ha ha, Asuma-sensei, you got me good. This is what I get for underestimating you. Naruto looked up at Asuma, waving Tsunade back. But now, I guess we get serious. However strong Naruto's chakra pressure and presence had been before, it was dwarfed by the massive surge in both as Naruto straightened up, threw his head back and screamed, uncontrolled shockwaves blasting off the teen as the very sky seemed to press down on everyone present. The scream ringing in their ears as Naruto attacked, Futon, Rasengan's winking into existence in the split second it took to look back down at Asuma, the older ninja desperately blocking the much more powerful variant of the Rasengan. A crazed grin graced Naruto's face as he forced the Rasengans further forward, arms shaking as his attacks fought against the rock-solid defense of Asuma's. Naruto grinned further, rapidly taking stock of his own deteriorating condition, knowing he needed either Kyubi or Tsunade's intervention soon, or else he would collapse. And right now, he didn't quite feel like losing to Asuma-sensei. Naruto leapt back, spamming shadow clones like his past self, all of them dashing forwards with a simple command, to buy time. He hunched over, cutting his chakra present. CE and pressure off so quickly everyone present stumbled from suddenly no longer needing to brace themselves against the immense weight of it. He chuckled, blood dripping from his mouth as he rushed He process of creating the Udama Rasengan fused with wind chakra. His mild sense of desperation lifted as he beheld the new creation. Apparently, he had been channeling the wind chakra into the technique too slowly. Something about being chained had caused the wind chakra to be more volatile than usual. But set free to mingle with his Rasengan somehow let the technique stabilize on its own. Entali dubbed the new technique Futon, Rasenshuriken for the giant, Fuma Shuriken shape it took on. Naruto winced from the even louder and sharper keening sound emitted from this attack, quickly finding that he could feel the much higher power of the attack cutting into his hands, unlike the normal Futon, Rasengan, which only hurt him if he let it explode in his hand. The Jinchuriki hefted the attack, then dispersed all his clones as he ran at Asuma, screaming as he brought the attack to bear on the older ninja. Asuma choked in surprise as the keening noise turned out to be a giant, bright WH. Ite and blue Rasengan shaped like a shuriken. He could instinctively tell that just as the Futon, Rasengan had been a great improvement over the standard Rasengan, this too was on a whole other level. Asuma instantly decided that, no matter what, he was not going to be hit by that attack. As Asuma substituted away, the attack slammed into the poor piece of wood that had taken his place, instantly shredding the log and then incinerating it as the attack detonated. Naruto at ground zero for the attack. As the smoke and dust from the explosion cleared, Asuma gaped at Naruto's hunched-over form, blood visibly dripping from the teen's mouth, arms and torso. The attack had apparently been just as much a double-edged sword as the 8 gates were, as Asuma could feel twinges in his own body. Javi Ing now been forced to use the first gate for much longer than he ever had before. Hey, needs work. I win. Asuma looked bewildered at Naruto's statement, then had no more time to ponder everything as everything went black. A clone having snuck up on him and swiftly knocked him out. The clone, about to gently lay Asuma on the ground, dispersed as Naruto collapsed, the combined toll of the futon, R. A Senshuriken and Asuma's wind attack having brought him to the brink of death. Tsunade and Sakura rushed over as Ino and Shikamaru checked over Asuma, bringing him to Guy, who deemed that Asuma just had a light bout of chakra exhaustion. Nothing that a few days of bed rest wouldn't fix. The man had been lucky. If any of Naruto's attacks had hit him, he would have been as gravely injured as the teen. Tsunade was berating Naruto through under her breath as she, Sakura and the Kyubi worked on the Jinchuriki's wounds. Stubborn little brat, didn't even allow the Kyubi to passively heal him. I didn't mean let go of all your advantages. You idiot, now you're going to be in the hospital again. You just got out. Naruto groaned, out of it but still feeling the dread of the hospital within his psyche, as he was currently being told off by all of his mental occupants. Again, Naruto groaned as he tried to open his eyes, feeling as if his entire body was on fire. He turned his head, trying to make out two blurry shapes at his side. He relaxed as he felt the comforting presence of his mentor and his Ba-chan, both of their chakras feeling oddly tense, as his senses were trained to their utmost by Jiraiya during his training trip. Naruto had started developing his latent sensing capabilities. Jiraiya had gone into fits of laughter when originally, Naruto had an incredibly difficult time seeing past his own overwhelmingly large chakra to look for others, but now, 2 years later, Naruto's own chakra was mere background noise. He heard Tsunade's voice, and turned his head slightly to hear her better. Brat, don't you dare use that jutsu again. Whatever that shuriken thing was. I'm classifying it as S-rank genjutsu until such time that you can figure out how to throw it or something. In other words, I'm forbidding you from using that in battle. Thank Kami you used it for the first time here, in Konoha. You might have died if you had been in the field. Naruto gulped, well aware of the damage he had sustained. I'm not even going to say anything about continuing the fight with the injury you sustained from Asuma's attack. Just rest for a day or two, and then see if there's anything you can do about not coming back here before your mission. With those words Tsunade left the room. Jiraiya chuckled into the sudden silence. Well, Gaki, I must say, I'm surprised Tsunade didn't punch you into next week as soon as you woke up. You gave her and the other medical ninja quite the scare. And the rest of us as well, to be honest. Jiraiya stopped smiling. Unfortunately, it looks like you're suffering from a weird version of chakra exhaustion. You only just recovered from the battle with Akatsuki and Orochimaru. To deplete yourself into the negatives has shaken your chakra reserves. Tsunade isn't sure when your chakra will recover. If it doesn't by the time the team needs to pay Orochimaru a visit, you'll be staying here and I'll be going as you in your stead. Jiraiya held up a finger as Naruto opened his mouth to protest. No buts. You're at less than 10% chakra. In the past 48 hours your chakra seems to fill up to full, then just drop straight back down again. None of us have any idea why. Your chakra didn't even rise and crash like that during your Bankai training sessions, so I have no idea what's going on. Naruto finally managed to interject at the end. Ero-sensei, it was Bankai training. Seeing me get taken down twice in a week pissed off Ryujin Jaka. He's been smashing me into the dirt training me. I've been using everything I've got to fight back, and I'm still losing. The only good thing is that in my mind at least, I can throw the Rasengan. Jiraiya looked simultaneously pleased and worried. Then how is the Bankai training coming along, and why is your chakra dropping so suddenly? Quote, it's gonna be a lot faster than all the others since I have the support of the Shikai forms of all of my swords. They refuse to lend me Bankai, and I agree, all Bankai can counter other Bankai. And having 3-on-1 would eventually overwhelm even Ryujin Jaka, but I don't want to take that shortcut. My chakra keeps dropping because I keep needing to spam Rasenshurikens halfway through the fight to even keep up. But Zangetsu says my Reiatsu is practically exploding in amount. I already have triple of how much I had a week ago. My chakra is also increasing, but slower. since I'm not using it as much except to make me faster and when I spam Rasenshurikens. So I need just a few days more, and I should have Ryujin Jaka's Bankai. Apparently it's beyond powerful, Jiraiya snorted. So long as you know what you're heading into, Naruto. Now then, we'll keep you here for another 2 days, and if you don't have your last Bankai by then, you'll have to abandon the training for it. Got it? Quote. Naruto nodded. Yes sir, and then promptly dropped back into a deep meditative slumber, accessing his inner mind again. Naruto's inner mind. The teen softly landed on the ground of his mindscape, then very swiftly had to vacate the area as a sword-wielding maniac descended upon his location, instantly incinerating that patch of ground out of existence. Naruto groaned as he pulled Hirenmaru out, triggering the Shikai as he used it to shield him a bit from the extreme heat coming off of Ryujin Jaka's Bankai form. Already, I literally just touched down. The only answer to Naruto's question was a vicious slash that nearly decapitated him if not for the swiftly interposed Hirenmaru. As it was, the sheer force behind the blow sent him flying away, itting along the air as Ryujin Jaka raced after him. Damn it! Split the heavens, Zangetsu! Howl! Zabumaru! Naruto holstered the now much larger cleaver that was Zangetsu, taking advantage of the speed boost granted to him by the sword. Dual-wielding Hirenmaru and Zabumaru as he had been for the past 2 days. Naruto spent a few moments examining his strongest sword. Ryujin Jaka had taken on the form of a human for Bankai training. Reasoning that Naruto needed to see how his Bankai abilities worked as a human using them. This form was of a 6'4" man who was constantly wreathed in flame, wielding a sword that looked burnt. And wouldn't it be, after being around blue-hot flames for years? The teen grit his teeth as he felt some of Kyubi's chakra seeping into his system, replenishing his chakra stores and making him faster and have sharper reflexes and senses. Naruto knew that he needed the sharper reflexes, or else he would fall into the same trap that Sasuke had in the Uchiha's first and only fight against Lee. Naruto's eyes were fast enough to track the living embodiment of fire that was Ryujin Jaka, but his body wasn't quite as fast. Gaki. Ryujin Jaka's voice rumbled from his temporary form's mouth. The deep bass literally shaking Naruto's mindscape as the sound rolled about the room. Still you react. When will you control the flow of action, and act instead of reacting to my moves? If you do not act, you will die. Naruto ducked, as even before Ryujin Jaka had finished his sentence, he had attacked, sword cutting the air where Naruto's head had been a split second before. Naruto was not entirely safe, however. He got a knee to the face for his troubles, sending him rocketing away and making him crash into the ground. Arg, damn it, why are you so strong? The last sentence was roared at Ryujin Jaka as Naruto let the Kyubi pump him full of chakra, demonic energy practically exploding off of the teen, 3 tails of chakra waving behind him as the demon chakra cloak formed around Naruto's body. Naruto's eyes reduced to mere slits as he attacked, letting Kyubi guide his movements, cutting at Ryujin Jaka continuously, but always barely missing. Tut, you are still too slow. Come back when you are stronger. Naruto's only response to the condescending statement was a roar. He tossed his swords to the side, tearing forward on all fours as he closed in on the ancient sword. Losing his control over his body as Kyubi gleefully pumped more chakra into the teen's body, making Naruto go 4 tails within the confines of his own mind. The abomination clawed outwards, palms barely grazing the man made of flame, rippling his cloak of fire. Ryujin Jaka chuckled, the noise angering Naruto, and by extension, Kyubi, even further. Naruto screamed, out of frustration and also pain as a 5th tail manifested, his rising anger spiraling out of control, a fact reflected in the real world where 3 tails of chakra coated the teen's body, Jiraiya having already called in Tenzo. The only child that had survived Orochimaru's Mokuden experiment. The child had grown up to be a fine ninja, and was in Anbu, where he used his grafted bloodline as best as he could. But now he was called up to attempt to suppress the Kyubi. The Toad Sage didn't hope for full suppression like the Shodaime Hokage, Hashirama Senju was capable of, Tenzo not having a Setually been born with it nor of Senju heritage, but he hoped that Tenzo could act as a good buffer in exactly this sort of case, where Jiraiya wasn't needed to intervene in a combat situation, but there everything could hopefully be resolved in a calmer manner. Regardless, Tenzo was here now, with Shizune, 2 full 8-man Anbu teams and Jiraiya on standby 2 feet away. The young man shivered. Even with Naruto unconscious and not on an actual rampage, the sheer malevolence of the Kyubi's chakra was just as he remembered it, 16 years ago. And the power was unmistakable. Even lying down, Tenzo could tell that unless Naruto didn't know he was there, he would never win against the Jinchuriki. Tenzo held his palm out, focusing on suppression, trying to tamp down that Kyubi's chakra. Everyone tensed as the chakra around Naruto spiked, the cloak of bright red chakra bubbling faster. Tenzo could see a small shred of Naruto's skin on his cheek start to peel away. Panic flooded his system as he abandoned his earlier, gentler suppression method and focused on just trying to get rid of the tailed beast's chakra entirely. The Mokuden user struggled as he felt the Kyubi's chakra pulsing against him. Struggling to fight past his Mokuden hold and escape, beads of sweat trailed down the young man's face as it was caught in a rictus of concentration and strain. After just a few minutes, he was already panting lightly, his breath getting ragged as he struggled to push back the ever-increasing force of the Kyubi's power. Tenzo could see that he was fighting a losing battle. Alred, why the skin along Naruto's cheeks were peeling away, turning to ash by the corrosive influence of the Kyubi. The skin along Naruto's forearms were starting to peel away as well. As Tenzo's breathing grew harsher in the real world, the battle kicked up a notch in Naruto's mindscape. The teen was now in 6-tailed mode, with a human-sized fox skeleton made of even more of Kyubi's chakra covering his body. The bones acted like the chakra cloak did in 1 through 3 tails, able to act as an alternate appendages, effectively giving Naruto 8 limbs instead of 4. The air within Naruto's mind oozed with malice. Ryujin Jaka and the Kyubi putting out enough each to kill Chunin from the sheer presence, and Naruto's killing intent outstripped both of theirs combined, strengthened by the cube. I's chakra and his other zanpakuto's reiatsu to nearly unbearable levels. Zabumaru, Hyarinmaru and Zangetsu sat in a corner as far away from the action as they could, all 3 of them sweating from the pressure, Hyarinmaru especially. Looking more like a baby snake than a formidable dragon made of ice, Ryujin Jaka's Bankai boosted heat melting him almost to nothing. This can't go on. Naruto will tear himself apart at this rate. And we'll go with him. Zangetsu looked at Zabumaru, whose outburst sounded more like a whisper from the weight exerted on them, even in this far-off corner. What would you have us do? Naruto is no longer in any form of control, he cannot wield any of our Bankai like this. All the boy is doing is sending out utterly ridiculous amounts of killing intent. If we attempt to join the fray we would be crushed up and spat out instantly by either of the 2 of those. Yes, but we must do something. Zabumaru snapped back, I'm not going to stand by and, Hyarinmaru, what are you doing? The 2 arguing Zanpakuto turned, looking at the suddenly foot-long ice dragon, whose length continued to grow. How are you growing? Hyarinmaru looked back at Zangetsu, preferring to abstain from responding as it took all of his energy to continue growing again, most of the moisture already sucked out by Ryujin Jaka, needing to rely on Naruto's currently unused reiatsu stores to continue his resurgence back to full size. Hyarinmaru activated his Bankai form with a twitch, the swell in size that accompanied the total access to his full power making him larger than the now 7-tailed Naruto, who was larger than most city blocks, and as tall as a small mountain. The now gigantic dragon made of ice opened his vast maw, took a second to let energy coalesce, and N focused that power and fired an energy beam made of ice, accompanying the attack with a shriek that would have caused any normal mortal beings to cover their ears in pain and writhe on the ground from the sheer inhumanity of it. Ryujin Jaka looked up, alerted by what was no less than a wyvern cry from the time of his youth, only to get a face full of ice-cold energy, launching him backwards like no attack had in millennia. The Kyubi looked up as the truly enormous winged snake slammed into the man cloaked in flame, Ryujin Jaka's human form melting away as he assumed his normal, wraith-like size and shape. Growing to match Hyarinmaru, the 2 immense dragons roared or shrieked at each other, clashing, leaving the Kyubi with a growing sense of disquiet. His feeling was soon validated as a giant snake made of bone crashed into his side, sending him tumbling away, only to be met from the opposite side with a Getsuga Tensho, the massive power behind the strike powered by Tensa Zangetsu, exploding with vicious force. Hihio Zabumaru followed up by firing his own attack from the mouth of his bone snake, the ball of energy detonating against the seven-tailed Kyubi-fied Naruto. Tenzo groaned, chakra now being pumped into him from over a dozen Anbu, using Shizune as a conduit, the massive amount being needed to fuel his suppression. He had managed to finally make a bit of headway, Naruto's skin no longer peeling away. But the fourth tail of chakra still wouldn't go away. He tried to focus harder, but after spending over a half-hour trying to suppress a being that didn't want to be, his focus was steadily worsening. For whatever reason Jiraiya-sama wouldn't just slap a suppression tag onto the team now, although he said he would the instant before Naruto converted to Four Tails mode. Ryujin Jaka grinned in the corner of his mind somewhere. It had taken a few thousand years, but Hirinmaru finally stood up to him again. He knew the ice dragon was as powerful as he was, Eve. And if the younger dragon didn't know it yet, Ryujin Jaka enjoyed both this fight and the one with the seven-tailed Naruto immensely, as these were the first fights since being wielded by Yamamoto that he felt pleasure. Hirinmaru rather rudely interrupted the fire dragon's musings by firing another of those insanely condensed beams of cold air at point-blank range. The fire dragon retaliated by firing an attack that he had dubbed Hyper Beam, mostly due to the immense power it required to generate it, and also due to the devastation it caused. Hirinmaru had however anticipated it being fired, and had moved out of the way accordingly, letting the beam spear into the distance before dissipating. He fired another one of his ice beams, not letting up for a second as he utilized Naruto's Rayouts. Stores to the max in his now prolonged battle. He noted with pleasure that at some point, the Kyubi had been forced to power down from 7 tails to 6, the much larger 7-tailed form no doubt being a liability as well as slow. Naruto sighed in frustration, watching the battle unfold from within the Kyubi, even the more agile 6-tailed form being unable to hit Tensa Zangetsu at all, and even though the Kyubi had critically injured Hahio Zabumaru several times, he could never capitalize on the opportunity thanks to Tensa Zangetsu. Kyubi roared as he was forced to downgrade yet again, Naruto's rage having turned to frustration, it no longer let him pull out increasing amounts of power. Now with just 5 tails of power, the two Bankai form zanpakutos started laying into him with increasing rapidity, causing Naruto's disappointment to grow, further weakening Kyubi's hold as more and more of his power vanished. The Kyubi gasped as a particularly powerful Getsuga Tensho ripped into him, actually vaporizing 2 of his tails, dropping him from 5 tails straight to 3 tails, also making the last of his hold disappear from Naruto, who promptly collapsed. The sudden drop in Reiatsu from Naruto caused Hirinmaru to pause, eyes flickering as he fired his strongest attack. An attack so cold it was white-hot, Aeroblast. The unstable attack collided with Ryujin Jaka, who was so surprised that his grasp on Bankai dissipated, and was thus knocked unconscious by the attack itself. A few minutes later, the 3 conscious Zanpakuto sighed, arrayed around their fellow Zanpakuto and wielders' unconscious forms. All 3 had powered down to their base forms as soon as both combatants had fainted. Well, that's one way of making them stop fighting. Now if you two will excuse me, I need to sleep. As the last syllable left his lips, the now much smaller ice dragon curled up and instantly fell asleep. Zangetsu and Zabumaru traded looks, passing out as well not long after. In the real world, Tenzo slumped in his chair. It had taken an hour, but the Kyubi had finally been suppressed. They had ended up needing Guy opening up 4 gates and Jiraiya to power him enough to shut the Kyubi down. Apparently it was a success, though he hoped he never needed to have someone share chakra with him again. Guy's gate-enhanced chakra was not only strong but also chaotic, adding an unneeded level of complexity to the matter. Naruto stepped out of the hospital, taking in a deep breath of fresh air, glad to no longer be confined to his stuffy hospital room. He took another step, then leapt up to the rooftops to get back home faster, wanting to grab some supplies and get to training his new Bankai, the sudden free-for-all having given him an idea of how to actually combat Ryujin Jaka. He also needed to get back into the swing of things, the forced 5-day-long stay in the hospital disrupting his normal training schedule. Naruto hopped closer to his apartment, neatly touching down in front of his door and entering to a mess. He cringed a bit, spending an hour or 2 cleaning up before heading out, having collected a veritable armory's worth of weapons. He knew he would have to not only brush up on his skills, but also get used to using Zenka no Tachi, Ryujin Jaka's Bankai form, in battle. The thing was ludicrously powerful, and a known limiting factor was that he would never be able to use both elemental Bankai at once, due to the sheer heat let off by Zenka no Tachi. This meant an alteration to his ordinary fighting style, as well as how he handled situations. Training Ground 67. Naruto breathed deeply as he touched down, creating over 1,000 clones on his exhale. Each clone took a weapon from the vast pile Naruto had brought. He was trying to make the combat as real as possible without involving any real people, since he would rather not reduce them to ash like Ryujin Jaka's Shikai promised to do. With a flowing motion, he drew his strongest sword and immediately hopped into Bankai, heat rolling off of the blade in waves, and unfortunately popping every single clone as the wave washed over them, the heat being too high to bear for the fragile clones. Naruto blinked, ignoring the booming laughter in his head, opting to instead just do some simple kata with the Bankai, and practicing some larger sweeps. Ryujin Jaka spoke within his mind with his classical bass rumble. And now, intone kita, Tenchi Kaijin. See what it does. Naruto shrugged and calmly spoke the words that his sword told him to. Nothing happened. Idiot. You need to actually summon the power. Swipe your blade when you speak the words. The teen pouted, before swinging his sword and calling out the phrase again. Naruto stumbled in shock as a wave of heat washed out of his sword, slicing into a copse of trees and annihilating them out of existence. That's a bit extreme. Is there anything weaker? Naruto could practically hear the sigh of exasperation in his head. Gaki. I am quite possibly the strongest zanpakuto. That is roughly my second strongest attack, and if the next one I'm going to have you try doesn't work, then this one is the strongest of my attacks. But as for weaker, yes. Stab the ground in front of you. Naruto promptly stabbed the ground in front of him, and yelped as the ground near the tip was incinerated out of existence. See, even T. He merest of my full abilities are incredibly powerful. Always remember that when in Bankai, East and West, that is to say, Higashi, Kyokujutsugen and Nishi, Zanjutsu Gokui, are permanently activated, and cannot be turned off. East you have just seen for yourself. The edge of the blade incinerates anything it touches out of existence. West is armor for you. Anything that touches you is seared to nothingness. Be cautious when activating Bankai near others. As you saw, the heat itself is enough to kill, and during our battles you noticed, I'm sure, that Hirinmaru is unusable when I have been activated. Naruto nodded. Yeah, he had to pull on all of my Reiatsu in order to go into his full form. If I'm trying to maintain your Bankai I won't be able to maintain Hirinmaru's as well. Okay, what's the other attack you wanted me to try? Minami. Kaka Jumanokushi Daisojin. Stab the ground when you call out the name. Got it. Minami. Kaka Jumanokushi Daisojin. As Naruto called out his attack, stabbing the ground with the tip of his sword, the ground erupted around him, hundreds of skeletons bursting out onto the surface. Soon the entire field was swarming with skeletons, all burning from the immense heat of Naruto's Bankai. Dang, you don't do anything in halves. Are there literally 10 trillion skeletons I can summon, or is that just for effect? Ryujin Jaka pondered the question. You know, I'm not sure. I've never had the chance to see if it's true, I've only ever needed at most a few thousand skeletons. Try summoning more. The teen goggled at his sword's ignorance, sighing, and twitching his Reiatsu in order to summon more and more of the skeletons. I can't summon any more than 1,000 without setting the forest on fire, I guess we'll have to test it in battle. Ryujin Jaka snorted. Nonsense. The forest is already burned to cinders, keep going. Naruto looked around wildly. He had kept his Bankai activated for so long that indeed, most of the trees around him for several miles were reduced to crisps. The heat flowing off of Naruto severe enough to bake them where they stood. You didn't tell me that would happen. You didn't ask. Also, your armor is 15 million degrees Fahrenheit. What did you think would happen? The young ninja gargled a stream of incoherence before powering down to Shikai. If the temperature estimate was true, he wouldn't want to face it without his Shikai. True enough, Naruto felt a suffocating heat press on him from all sides, sweat instantly dripping from his forehead and hair and vaporizing in the heat, giving him a rather steamed look. This is ridiculous. And what do I do with the skeletons? Simply release the Reiatsu you're putting out to keep them here. Naruto grumbled, manually turning the Reiatsu flow off, the skeletons crumbling to dust. I'm glad we did this a few miles away from Konoha. I can't imagine the destruction this would cause if I had released this within the walls. Oh, don't worry about that, Ryujin Jaka chuckled, enjoying his wielder's distress. You've probably alerted everyone within a few dozen miles as soon as you activated Bankai. There's no hiding my power. The massive beast of flame changed topics. Your skeletons. By the way, if you know who they were, you could summon their likeness, kind of like that reanimation jutsu the snake Sannin is so fond of. But better. Because I'm better. Clearly. Naruto drawled out his response, only half sarcastic as he took in the sight of the full destruction wreaked by his newest Bankai. Several miles of burnt trees, gigantic crevasses, and piles of ash where the skeletons had stood. Yeesh, if I use this there won't be anything left of my enemies. Last resort only. That's kind of the point behind, reduce all creation to ash. And that's just Shikai. Naruto rolled his eyes. I get it. You're the best. Happy. Yes, thanks. Naruto sighed, grumbling as most of his armory was also burned to crisps or piles of melted steel. Great, I'm gonna need to stock up again. If Naruto had been in his mindscape, he would have seen the smug grin on the fire dragon's face at hearing that statement. He turned, wondering if he wanted to report the total devastation of the training ground, then realized they would know it was him anyways, and so he ran a few more katas with just Shikai, then powered down fully, choking on the dissipating heat before speeding off in the direction of the village, taking in the sights of mile after mile of devastated forest. Naruto grimaced at the thought of turning that destructive force on a human, but knew he would probably need it against the Akatsuki. Konoha. Naruto entered the main administration building before swiftly passing on the information about the destruction he had wreaked on a poor, defenseless training ground, leaving a sputtering Chunin in his wake over the entirely unsatisfactory response of new technique. To answer his questions on how or why Naruto had done that to the training ground. As he left he could hear multiple Chunin raving in the background about, damn S-rank ninjas and their new techniques, it takes forever to fix training grounds, but he just grinned. Happy to spread chaos while training. Naruto Roof hopped over to his apartment after spending some time shopping, picking up some veggies from some oddly exhausted vendors for once, his time with Jiraiya having finally converted him to their taste, as well as the value of their nutrition. He also stocked up on the specific ration bars ninja favored, the ones most of them took with them on missions. After such miscellaneous tasks, he took a much-needed nap. In other parts of the village, however, things were not so relaxed. Hokage office. No, Tsunade-sama, we still have no idea what caused the sudden heat wave. Or why it vanished again so suddenly. An officious-looking shinobi told the Hokage, trying to answer her heated questions without much success. He paused as Tsunade rubbed her forehead with her fingers, her fingertips lighting up with medical chakra that she used to soothe her raging headache. Briefly, the ninja wished he had that sort of instant headache reliever, the thought was wiped as soon as his brain caught up with the thought and processed it out. He didn't have anywhere near the chakra control required for such a thing. I have a feeling that Naruto is behind this, somehow. Tsunade muttered under her breath, he can't even leave the hospital without causing minor crises, can he? Near the end of the Hokage's rhetorical question, her voice shot up. Before she slammed her fist on the table, making it creak ominously and making the ninja in front of her jump in surprise. Shizune, she thundered, get me Naruto, and bring him here immediately. He is the most likely culprit. Unless Kakashi has suddenly decided to abandon his love for lightning jutsu. Shizune saluted before disappearing. Hi Tsunade-sama. Shizune didn't think Naruto was capable of the act, seeing as how none of his abilities had anything to do with producing a wave of heat so intense dozens of people had passed out from heatstroke as soon as it hit, causing the hospital to be suddenly flooded with the dozens of reported injuries and ailments, as the suddenness of it startled many people who were going about their jobs as well. The extreme temperature had also caused many homeowners' AC units to break as well, the machines being unable to handle the heat, just like the people. The only people happy in Konoha at the moment were the AC repair ninja, and even they were lethargic from the heat. The heat had lasted for an intolerable amount of time, enough for even some of the medic nin to pass out, before suddenly dissipating again. The event had caused no end of chaos for the administration ninjas. As the building had been peppered with questions as to what caused it, and even the Konohan Meteorological Division had no answers, as the spokesperson giving his report to Tsunade had said. Shizune pondered on what sort of extreme technique could generate the kind of heat everyone had experienced, especially as it had to have been a sustained technique. Becca. No one had felt any change in the intensity until it had dropped off again. She shivered. Anyone with the chakra stores to sustain that kind of technique needed to stay far away from the city proper of Konoha. Only a handful on Konoha ninja would be able to fight such a person. Naruto's apartment. Luckily for Shizune, that person was Naruto, who was rather rudely awakened from his highly comfortable nap. His AC working perfectly in the light afternoon heat. Shizune rapped smartly on his apartment door, with enough force to jolt Naruto from his slumber. The teen stumbled over to his door, opening it sleepily. "Huh, was it?" Shizune sighed fondly as Naruto stared at her blearily, the sight silently confirming in her mind that Naruto had simply gone home and gone straight to sleep after being released from the hospital. "Come on, Naruto-kun, Tsunade-sama wants to see you." Naruto blinked, the words taking a few seconds to sink in. "Huh, why, can't I finish my nap first?" Shizune giggled. Nearly every other ninja would have dashed around their apartment, quickly pulling on clothes so they could answer their Hokage's summons, but nope. Naruto wanted to nap more. "No, silly, Tsunade-sama wants to see you now. Take a minute to wake up and get dressed, we need to go right away. It concerns the heat wave." As Naruto nodded and stumbled back inside to dress and freshen up, Shizune's last sentence slowly tumbled through his brain, not making any sense until later. He swiftly dressed, making sure to clip all 4 of his swords to his person. Sure, he could summon them from his apartment if he needed to. But that would just take too long in battle. Naruto exited his apartment, nodded at Shizune, and they both vanished into Shunshin, blurring over to the Hokage office. Hokage building. Naruto touched down next to Shizune, in front of the 5th Hokage, whose expression swept the last dregs of drowsiness from his mind as Shizune's statement from earlier clicked. Naruto's eyes widened minutely as he realized that if Konoha had felt the heat wave from his Bankai, it must have been a horrific experience for anyone not sheltered by a fire immunity that Naruto had, thanks to the blade itself. Tsunade's eyes immediately picked up on the subtle hint of shock visible on Naruto's face. She quietly commended Jiraiya in her thoughts. 2.5 years ago, Naruto would have shouted whatever realization he had come to at the top of his lungs. Now, it took a seasoned ninja to pick up on the teen's surprise. These small revelations, however, did not prevent Tsunade from asking her questions. "So, Gaki, did you create a new S-rank technique or something an hour or so ago?" Naruto chuckled, a little flustered. Nope, Ba-chan. Not me." He winced as Tsunade's glower was directed at him. The Hokage sighed tiredly. "Fine, have you created or unleashed anything in the past few hours that would release a searing heatwave?" Naruto nodded, not sure where the conversation was going. Shizune looked shocked, and Tsunade merely looked resigned, muttering under her breath. "I knew it." The older of the 2 kunoichis raised her voice back to a normal level. "Then please explain how or why you created that heat wave, and why you directed it at Konoha. We have dozens of injuries and the hospital is currently flooded with heatstroke patients." Naruto looked stricken, unable to believe what he was hearing. He could hear Ryujin Jaka in his mind saying, "I told you so, Gaki. Be careful with my Bankai, it's not a toy. Ba-chan, I swear, I never meant to direct it at Konoha. From my understanding it was an omnidirectional blast or wave of heat. I'd never turn something like that on my village." Naruto's response at the end was slightly heated, stunned that one of his precious people would suggest such a thing. "I thought I was far enough away from Konoha, but apparently not. If I ever use it again, outside of battle, I'll make sure to travel farther away." Tsunade shook her head. "Maybe, but in the meantime you can make it up but helping out with the overworked hospital and in the village. Shizune, teach him how to make water clones, and I will then teach him earth clones." Those should be capable of doing the heavy lifting we need right now. Naruto, hop to it. Naruto nodded and within the hour, had both new techniques mastered, then he started spamming both, creating legions of clones. Each tasked to help out however they could. That Naruto himself had caused the heatwave was left out, but everyone appreciated his help. After a couple days, he had managed to pull the city back on its feet, and Tsunade had released him from cleanup work so he could rest for the 3 days before the retrieval mission. Those 3 days seemed to flit by, but in the end, Naruto was fully refreshed. Day of the mission. Naruto slung on his backpack with his kit, having been able to purchase another massive amount of weapons thanks to Anbu hunters finding pieces of Sasori and Deidara's bodies to give to bounty collectors. They were still trying to get into Mizu to sell back Kisame's body, although they had gifted Naruto Kisame's sword. The bounties from killing 2S rank, internationally wanted criminals massively padded Naruto's pockets, so he splurged a bit on supplies for the mission. Now he eagerly awaited the arrival of his teammates for the mission. One by one they filed in. Even Kakashi was only 5 minutes late. With a nod they took off, each of them well aware of the mission parameters. Flashback to one day before, Hokage's office. Tsunade looked at her ninja. Now, I want Sasuke back here alive, preferably. If you absolutely can't capture him, Asuma, you know what you need to do. Any of Orochimaru's henchmen that get in the way, you have my permission to use all necessary force. As for Kabuto and Orochimaru, take them out with extreme force. Again, Naruto is to be mission leader, with Neji, Asuma and Kakashi evaluating him. That is all for today, dismissed. Present day, forests of Konoha. They moved in arrowhead formation, Naruto in front, with Neji and Asuma slightly behind on his left and right, Sakura and Shikamaru behind them in the center. And lastly with Kakashi bringing up the rear. Shikamaru and Sakura were the slowest of the group, everyone else matched their speed so that they didn't strain themselves. Kakashi mused on how slow Naruto must feel, probably the same as Jiraiya had felt when he was accompanied by Kakashi and Guy. Both Jonin had noticed Jiraiya holding himself back, and had pushed themselves to try to match the Toad Sanin's speed, but he was always ahead. Shikamaru reflected on his former classmate. Naruto had grown leaps and bounds ahead of everyone, even in the present company. Neji had grown so much, not only as a person but as a ninja. Neji was even the first of the rookies to become Jonin, but Shikamaru was certain that after watching Naruto's spar with Asuma, Neji didn't hold a candle to Naruto anymore. While when they were kids Naruto had only been just barely more powerful. Shikamaru would have been mildly surprised to learn that Neji's thoughts ran in a similar vein. However, unlike how he would have acted 2.5 years ago, there was no jealousy in Neji now. He marveled at Naruto's growth, and grinned to himself that it had taken a Hokage to beat him. Ever since that fateful Chunin exam, he had pushed himself farther and farther, culminating in the failed attempt to retrieve Sasuke. He had nearly died, trying to defeat one of the Sound Five. Naruto had fought the strongest, and then Sasuke, nearly dying in the process as well. Neji had looked at Naruto in his hospital bed, silently vowing to visit terrible pain on the Uchiha that had hurt his leader so. Even as a genin, Neji thought of Naruto as his leader, his Hokage. Neji's hardest loss had won him more than just the acceptance of his uncle, it had won him a leader, a captain, and a lifelong friend. Naruto may not have known it, but Neji would gladly lay down his life for a select number of people. But for Naruto, he would happily kill anyone his cage told him to. Sakura worried. She honestly had no place here. She was realistic enough to know that, while she was essentially S rank in medical matters, her combat potential would never be as high as Naruto's. Even now, she was a Chunin at a solid B rank. And soon she planned on making the transition to A rank, but Naruto was an S rank shinobi. He was Kage class, such that he had fought 4 members of the Akatsuki and killed D3 while mortally wounding the 4th. That 4th just happened to be Itachi Uchiha Konoha's personal boogeyman. And a rampaging Naruto had nearly killed him. The same Itachi that had hospitalized Kakashi and Sasuke for a month until Naruto and Jiraiya had retrieved Tsunade. The same Itachi that had slaughtered his own entire clan to a man, barring one child. Jiraiya had explained how Naruto had left the man a shell of his true self, kneeling, unable to do anything to stave off death, if not for being rescued. What was Sakura doing here? Asuma traded amused looks with Kakashi. They had noticed the younger ninjas all slipping into contemplative moods. They were perfectly alright with that. Between the two of them they had multiple legends they made in the peace following the Third Great Ninja War. It would take a task force of S-rank ninja to take them by surprise, and they already knew the fate of the last such force that had encountered Naruto. Asuma mused a bit on the sudden powerhouse that was Naruto. That attack of his, he had quietly asked Naruto what it was called after their briefing. Rasenshuriken, a form of the Rasengan so powerful that it had been classed in S-rank genjutsu. Forbidden, the legend that was the oldest living Sarutobi and former member of the 13 Guardians almost ended that day. To an attack crafted in the heat of the moment by a half-dead teenager. No, Asuma had a lot to fear from Naruto, but never that the kid would go peacefully to death. He shuddered minutely. Asuma hoped to Kami-sama that he never faced a serious Naruto that had no handicaps. Kakashi was happy. His two favorite students had grown up well. One was swiftly becoming unrivaled in medicine, and one would become Hokage. Yes, life was good for Kakashi. His last student though, that one needed a bit of work. Kakashi just wasn't sure if it was blade work or good work. And so Team Havoc continued on their mission to retrieve Sasuke, kill Orochimaru and Kabuto, and spread general chaos in Orochimaru's bases. The next morning, Naruto sat with Shikamaru, listening to his former classmate's instructions. So then, Naruto, you distract Orochimaru, and I'll snare him. And we can get Kakashi-sensei and Asuma-sensei to kill him. Agreed. Naruto shook his head minutely. The Nara blanked for a second, then angrily demanded why Naruto would not agree. Sorry, Shika, it's nothing against you. The problem is that you could never snare Orochimaru for long enough to Kaka-sensei and Asuma-sensei to kill him. You would need to be of comparable power, and you're not S-rank, last I checked. A wry grin flitted over Naruto's face, easing Shikamaru's mood slightly. The strategist snapped irritably, knowing he was being a bit irrational and heated against the other team, but this was Orochimaru. A man feared enough that, like Itachi, efforts had never been made to retrieve him. Normal genin and chunin like him and Naruto did not belong on such a battlefield. Privately, Shikamaru wasn't even sure if Kakashi and Asuma would even be capable of taking on the Snake Sannin. Fine then, what do you suggest? Naruto raised his voice slightly, instinctually channeling a little chakra into his words. Each syllable suddenly reverberated with a quiet power. His voice easily carried to the other members of his team, who had been politely ignoring the conversation between the two. Neji instinctually snapped to attention, Kakashi and Asuma following out of sheer habit. Both older Jonin had served under 3 Hokage, and such a response was unconscious. Neji had long ago accepted Naruto as his leader. The response surprised even him with how natural it was. Sakura started slightly, not being used to such commanding words coming from anyone but Tsunade or high-level medic Nin. Shikamaru stared, slightly open-mouthed, feeling like a rug had been pulled out from under him. Gone was the brash, pig-headed and loud ninja that he remembered, and now truly Shikamaru saw Naruto in a new light. This was no ordinary genin. Heck, Naruto didn't even act like a jonin. He acted like a cage equitable enough that he would listen to advice, but knowing his own power better than anyone else. He was quick to point out flaws in the Naruto's plan. In other words, the best kind of cage. Very well, this is how it will go down. I will face Orochimaru, alone. The young Uzumaki's voice brooked no argument, the chakra lacing his words and his tone of command preventing his teammates from even attempting to speak. Sakura is the emergency medic. Should I be taken down? Neji and Shikamaru will cover her while she heals me. In the meantime, Kakashi and Asuma will hold off Orochimaru. The instant I return to fighting form, all of you will retreat again. This will not be a place for Chunin. Or even Jonin. Orochimaru is a Sannin, aka he is on par with Tsunade-sama, our current Hokage, as well as Jiraiya, my mentor. I am a Jinchuriki, and I alone of the 6 of us can fight him on an even keel. In the event of me going under the Kyubi's influence, you are only cleared to approach my body so long as less than 3 taels of chakra are present. None of you have the training that Jiraiya has to deal with my rampaging self 3 taels and onwards, nor the special cream that resist the corrosive effects of the Kyubi's chakra. I cannot state in dire enough terms. Approaching me while I am in 3 taels chakra mode or above with anything less than the power of a cage is a surefire way to die. Naruto's gaze burned into each of them in turn, impressing upon them the severity of such a situation. In the event I go 4 taels, run. Run back to Konoha. Jiraiya and Itachi Uchiha are the only 2 ninja that have faced my 4 taels form and lived to tell of it. And even then they did not defeat me in either situation. Itachi was rescued from the brink of death, and Jiraiya managed to surprise my berserk form and tamp the Kyubi's chakra down again. With 4 taels of the Kyubi's chakra, my will is superseded by the Kyubi's own. I am only capable of passing on vague instructions, such as, kill Itachi. If you are in the area and I no longer have a target, you will die. Naruto's matter-of-fact tone shocked the younger ninjas. However, they couldn't argue, for a multitude of reasons. Sakura had seen the aftermath of such a bout, the 2 vast craters. Destroyed landscape and huge trenches rent in the earth. She knew how good of a healer she was, but hearing of how Jiraiya had witnessed the end of the battle, she knew that she could never stand against such a force. Neji knew without a shadow of a doubt that he didn't hold a candle to the slightly younger ninja. Naruto had only barely tapped into the Kyubi's power when the Uzumaki had defeated him. Neji had no wish to experience 4 taels of chakra personally. He would be happy to watch Orochimaru or Sasuke get hit by that inhuman force, but not himself. Shikamaru had balked originally, when Naruto spelled out their certain doom, even to the Jonin sensei, but Shikamaru's brain reminded him of when he had found out about Naruto's Jinchuriki status, and was reminded by his father that Gaara, now the 5th Kazekage of Tsunade, was only the container for the Aikibi. Shikamaru had even had the honor of speaking with the young Kage, getting a detailed account of the Aikibi container's battle with the Kyubis. Gaara spoke of how Naruto, with only the dregs of his chakra, already exhausted from fighting Neji, had honestly beaten the crap out of him. And then summoned the Toad Boss summon, Gamabunta, with the Kyubi's chakra, which had then put Naruto on par with the released Aikibi. Shikamaru twitched. At the age of 12, Naruto had beaten a rampaging Jinchuriki at less than half power. If only hints of the Kyubi's chakra could do that, he was in no hurry to be introduced to 4 taels mode. Asuma watched his student fondly, knowing that Shikamaru would find it hardest to accept that his sensei would be talked down to in such a respectful manner. But Asuma knew his own limits. He was not quite on par with Kakashi, only Guy was of equal power, and Kakashi had confided in him the sheer despair he had felt upon feeling just the backwash of the Kyubi's power when Naruto had gone 4 taels in his bout against 4 members of the Akatsuki. Asuma also looked back on his brief bout with the teen, when Naruto had decided to fight completely limited, for some reason. Even then, when he had struck a critical blow, the half-dead teenager had nearly ended his life. Asuma wanted no part in engaging a Naruto possessed with even 4 taels of the beast's power. As Naruto himself had stated, it would be as foolish as asking Jiraiya to attack him at full power. Kakashi chuckled quietly. He, out of everyone present, knew firsthand the terror Naruto's 4 taels form caused. Jiraiya-sama himself had turned white with shock. In Kakashi's book, anything that old make his sensei's sensei panic was not worth fighting, unless he was 100% forced to. Kakashi doubted that even the Mangekyo Sharingan, his newest technique, would not even the playing field in the slightest. So, everyone is agreed. Naruto didn't even wait for their agreement, forging on, good. We rest for the rest of the day, and tomorrow we face Orochimaru. Naruto promptly slipped into his tent, instantly falling asleep. He had no way of knowing the stupor that had seized a hold on his team, keeping them pondering his words long into the day before they finally broke camp and went to sleep. Late afternoon the next day, the Bridge of Earth and Fire. The recently dubbed Team Havoc arranged themselves in the bushes as Naruto stepped from the shelter of the trees to stride over to the bridge. He stopped at the edge. Seeing Orochimaru on the other side, Naruto scowled across the bridge. Orochimaru was standing across from him, hints of a grin playing across the older man's lips. Both ninjas separated by a mere steel bridge. Naruto's team hung back, waiting to jump in if the need arose, no matter how much Naruto assured them that it would be unnecessary. He only had a single sword on his person. And it worried them. They had no way of knowing that Naruto could never be separated from his swords, as if he really needed them, he could call them from his heart itself. Orochimaru grinned privately to himself. The brat in front of him might be powerful, even having succeeded in driving him off once, but Jiraiya was not in the child's backup team. None of these fools would leave here alive, save for the Jinchuriki himself. The team called out to the man standing before him. "Surrender Sasuke, Orochimaru, and I might let you leave here with all of your limbs." His scowl deepened as the Rouge Sannin simply cackled in response. Disdain dripped from Orochimaru's voice as he replied. "You do any significant damage to me? Impossible. You may be capable of fighting the Akatsuki when using the Kyubi's power. But without it you are as weak as ever." The air that had been blowing suddenly stilled. Everyone in the area felt as if the world had come to a standstill. Orochimaru arched an eyebrow, knowing that his words had hit home, and wondering what Naruto's answer would be. This stillness was classical of powerful ninjas. When they flexed their chakra, the air itself seemed to follow their direction instead of that of the forces of nature. Orochimaru kept his face inscrutable as he always did, save for the eyebrow. He twitched, however, when chakra suddenly seemed to explode off of Naruto's body. The air weighed down on him. But miraculously, Naruto's expression didn't shift in the slightest. In actuality, Zabumaru was stridently trying to make Naruto calm down. But the recent awakening of Ryujin Jaka's full power left Naruto extremely prone to high tempers. His efforts would have been in vain if not for Naruto's own foresight. He had left the Physica L forms of all of his swords but Hirinmaru with his team, thus muting the fire sword's influence and strengthening the ice sword's influence instead. A steely calm settled over Naruto as he fully embraced Hirinmaru's power. Preferring to strike with ice-cold anger than a burning rage, his eyes shifted from their customary bright, deep blue to a pale shadow of their former beauty, becoming as flat and as cold as Haku's ice mirrors once were. A whisper of wind seemed to spin a leaf in the wind. It gradually drifted to a halt at Naruto's feet, and then promptly cracked, covered in frost. Orochimaru looked on in complete indifference as a circle of frost crackled outwards from Naruto's feet, but was unable to resist sucking in a sharp breath like the teen's own backup as the temperature dropped straight to zero, then kept plunging. The bridge nearest the Jinchuriki letting out ominous creaks as whether it had never been built to resist bloom to life next to it. "Sit upon the frozen heavens, Hirinmaru." Naruto uttered his Shikai activation phrase as he drew and lifted his sword into the air, the tip shining briefly as a sudden blaze of power-coated Naruto, the sudden force of bone-chillingly cold Reiatsu. Laced with just enough chakra for the ninjas to feel it, forced the weaker ninjas to their knees and even stilled the breath in Orochimaru's lungs for a brief second as the call D brought him back to the Second Ninja World War in Mizu against Hyoten users. The Sannin then exploded into action. If the idiot boy had somehow gained Hyoten at an adult age, he needed to know how. Such a discovery would massively jump-start Orochimaru's own research. Normally the man stored Kusanagi in a special compartment in his throat. But the need for this new experimental subject plus the very real threat it produced now meant that the snake Sannin instead simply summoned it to his hand. Leaping at the still boy, he brought the full might of his own chakra pressure to bear. The rookies in the bushes thought they might die. The sheer pressure exerted on them, just from the 2S rank ninjas flexing their figurative muscles had them gasping for breath. They realized now why Naruto had told them to stand back. They would be as useless as a genin team was in a battle between jonin. Seasoned jonin and Anbu may as well be civilians for all the threat they presented to truly strong cage-level ninja. And the two clashing in the clearing doubtlessly held that amount of power. Naruto shrieked at Orochimaru, the sound sounding inhuman to everyone's ears, even Orochimaru, who recoiled slightly. The teen smirked in his mind, an expression mirrored by Hirinmaru, the sound that he had just emitted similar to the ice dragon's own cry. The wave of sound physically pushed the Sannin back, who then had his hands full as the two titans clashed again and again, soul blade versus blade from legend. Old against young. The clearing resounded with the clang of steel on steel as The bridge shook under the force of the blows that were transmitted into it from the dueling ninjas. Naruto screamed, ice-cold chakra flowing around him as he swept his sword at Orochimaru. A wave of ice leapt out at the older ninja, who cursed lightly before jumping out of the way. It crashed into the bridge, damaging it further, the bridge now sagging lightly under the extreme forces it was being subjected to. The battle between the two shinobi cranked up a notch as they started trading jutsu, Orochimaru steadily losing ground as ice started creep all over the team, coating him in armor and protecting him from most of the jutsu. Especially as a simple slash of the idiot's sword could dissipate even A-rank ninjutsu. On the other hand, Naruto could flick out 5 elemental dragons at a whim. All 5 of which were considered A-rank, though the lightning and wind ones pushed the envelope to S-rank. The two moved across the bridge now, barely noticing the way it creaked ominously underfoot. The vast majority of their focus going into unleashing mass destruction on each other. Orochimaru grinned internally even as he scowled externally. This boy was actually giving him a run for his money. Jiraiya had for once not slacked off, which surprised the snake Sannin immensely. Nonetheless, this was only basics. Even if the boy did know how to throw his chakra around, would he be able to take it to another level? As if Naruto could read Orochimaru's mind, he sent out a pulse of Reiatsu, ice starting to shift on his left shoulder, gradually forming a wing made of ice. Naruto shrieked again, slashing his sword at a much higher speed, a dragon made of ice leaping from the tip, nearly impaling Orochimaru, who paled drastically. His last encounter with someone who could make dragons of ice was an incredibly skilled Hyoten user. For the Kyubi Jinchuriki to already have such control over his acquired blood limit was uncanny and prodigious. Naruto cranked his chakra pressure up a notch, roaring at Orochimaru. The sound again acting like a push, sending the Sannin skidding back onto the opposite side of the crevasse and off the bridge. Unfortunately, that was also the last bit of punishment that the bridge could take. And it promptly crumpled, with Naruto standing halfway along it. Orochimaru wondered how the boy would take it when he noticed not only the wing of ice, but the way it gently flapped, and lastly, that the teen had not moved from his spot. Except there was now a yawning chasm under him, no long a bridge. To have mastered that bloodline to such a degree, he can even make it keep him in the sky. Flying ninjas. No, I must know how he did it. Naruto grumbled. He hadn't wanted to reveal that he could fly yet, but it would have to do. He exploded into action, soaring across the gap, ice now coating his whole body except his head as the most unconventional armor ever. As he closed the gap, he let fly with a stream of elemental dragons, pumping his hand full of chakra so they would continue to stream out long after he had stopped paying attention. Orochimaru boggled slightly at the sight of a river of 5 different elements approached him. This was getting less and less fun. As much as he would normally deny it, Jiraiya was as strong as he was, and he enjoyed testing himself against his fellow Sannin. But this was progressively starting to look like the teen had the upper hand. The power of flight, Hyoten, and with Kyubi the child would be unstoppable. It was time to change the game. Orochimaru dashed to the side, then revealed the second best power of Kusanagi. Its ability to change its length according to its wielder's whims. Naruto heard a scream in his head as the newly formed ice wing suddenly interposed in his vision, covering his entire left side. He put an identity to the scream when he realized it was Hirenmaru. Apparently he had been a split second from being skewered by the Kusanagi. Naruto's eyes seemed to glow as he let forth all of his tightly leashed chakra. If the air had seemed a choking hazard before, it was nothing compared to the storm of chakra pressure now. Orochimaru paused, aware that somehow, he had royally pissed off the teen. But literally unable to move, feeling like he was trying to move while wrapped in steel. Orochimaru had felt terror like this only once in his life. When he, Tsunade and Jiraiya had attacked Hanzo. And the man had absorbed their best, and defeated them like they were nothing. They had been miles from the front line. Backup would never get there in time, and there had only been one OT. Her person who had the power to match Hanzo, being their sensei. Absolute despair sunk into Orochimaru. Staring into young Naruto Uzumaki's eyes right now felt just like when he had looked up at Hanzo in despair. Knowing there was nothing he could combat this with. Even when facing the Kyubi 16 years ago he had not been this scared. Then he had been older, more powerful, and secure in the knowledge they had one current Hokage. One retired Hokage and all 3 Sannin in the village at once, not to mention the full might of the strongest of the ninja villages backing them. Here, gazing into the implacable pools of frozen water that Uzumaki's eyes had become, Orochimaru felt raw, unfiltered fear. The sky darkened as if foretelling the destruction that was about to be unleashed, but instead of a lightning storm, the clouds seemed full of snow. The snake Sannin's brief confusion turned back into terror as the snow melted as soon as it got within 10 feet of the younger ninja that he faced. Somehow, someway, the Jinchuriki could control the weather, and the Sannin knew that the full force of that wrath was going to be turned on him. Naruto breathed deeply. Somehow Hirenmaru had been injured trying to shield him. His bonded sword was injured. Hirenmaru, injured, because of Orochimaru. Orochimaru. The teen's eyes seemed to glow even more intensely as he abandoned all pretense, letting his chakra mix with his Reiatsu. Letting loose with the Kyubi's chakra as well, the fiery rage boiling in his blood more than sufficient to call the Kyubi. The very air seemed to groan under the pressure suddenly put on it. The Kyubi cackled in his cage. His jailer was furious, practically seething with anger that he was more than happy to fuel, pumping his cage full of chakra, and watching it rush out with relish as the teen dropped his Shikai form in the hopes that it would let Hirenmaru recover. And then Naruto looked inward, and called out to the Kyubi. "Kyubi, I need some of that rent again." Naruto was unaware, but his eyes were blazing with blue light, which swiftly transitioned to red as a tide of the Kyubi's chakra swept into him. Kyubi's grin matched Naruto's now. Feral smirk as the teen let his mindscape fall away, leaving him in the real world. No time had passed, and he enjoyed seeing the fear in Orochimaru's eyes as his body practically glowed with chakra now, winds whipped around him. The vast power increase cracking the ground around his feet. Naruto crouched onto all fours, 2 tails of chakra streaming behind him as he shot forward. Orochimaru never stood a chance. Unlike any other time where Naruto asked for the Kyubi's power, Naruto was in full control. He opened up the fight with a left hook. Normally, it would have been fairly damaging. But now, augmented with 2 tails of Kyubi's chakra, it sent even an S-rank ninja crashing through dozens of meters of trees. Orochimaru coughed as he smashed into a small clearing. Now far away from the choking miasma of the Kyubi's power, he could actually breathe. His eyes widened as nearly without movement, the Kyubi brat reappeared, seeming to have teleported. Mouth a grim slash, he prepared to fight the now much more powerful Jinchuriki. Faintly, as sounds of an absolute beating commenced, he wondered what caused 1 or 2 or 3 tails to appear. Kakashi frowned. The battle had moved beyond the entire team's line of sight. All except for Neji. He swiftly commanded the young Jonin to activate his eyes. Said Hyuga gasped, explaining to the others that he could see Naruto fighting the snake Sannin, with 2 tails. Just like a little while ago, and clearly winning, but somehow not able to kill the Sannin. "Thank you, Neji. If the battle doesn't improve in a minute or so, we'll move out to assist." "No, Naruto is forming a 3rd tail." Kakashi cursed. A mile away, Naruto stared at Orochimaru, a frown marring his face. Orochimaru was cackling, raving about being invincible. Naruto thought maybe he and Jiraiya had hit the Sannin too hard in their time, knocking all of the Sannin's screws loose. He focused back on the traitor's words. "Observe, Naruto-kun, you may beat me in sheer power, but you will never kill me. As I am more durable." Then, with an absolutely disgusting vomiting noise, Orochimaru threw up another body. His new body rose to its feet, the old one turning to ash. Naruto grinned maliciously. Orochimaru might be able to revive himself in odd ways, but this was hardly Naruto's limit. "Orochimaru!" came the bellowed repartee, followed by a roar, augmented with 2 tails of power. Said Sannin braced himself, this time keeping from being blown off his feet. Whatever Orochimaru had been about to say died in the Sannin's throat as a 3rd tail started to form. The red chakra around Naruto bubbling more ominously and quickly. Naruto screamed in a combination of pain and rage, the sheer noise more powerful than an actual punch in 2 tails, meaning that Naruto was several times more powerful. The explosion caused by the scream was heard and seen by the Konohan team, who watched in shock as a huge pillar of chakra leapt up, and then their surprise grew. As several dull booms followed the scream, as only Neji could see the way Naruto's basic punches could now do as much damage as a futon, Rasengan. The teenage Hyuga muttered under his breath, "This is insane. Per Taicho's orders we are forbidden to go anywhere near. Kakashi-sensei, what should we do next?" Kakashi swallowed. Everyone on the team could hear the not-so-distant screams and explosions. No doubt at this point there was a fairly large clearing formed by Naruto's attacks. "We stay put for now. At this moment I think I am the only one who could actually enter the battle, not even Asuma would be of assistance now." He had glanced at the other elder Jonin, trying to assure him that he meant no insult. Asuma assumed a mildly composed veneer, but he was clearly also having Florida. Backs to the Kyubi's attack 16 years ago. The chakra that they felt wasn't anywhere near as malevolent, at least not at this distance, but the sinking feeling in his gut was more or less the same. Both older Jonin swallowed, their fear very apparent to the younger ninja, unknowingly terrifying them. In the Kyubi attack, they hadn't directly participated, but they had seen the destruction wrought by the beast. And they had then been safe in knowing that both Hokage, retired or not, were in the village, with the full backup of Anbu and all three Sannin. But here there was no backup. Ma then shivered as he realized that Orochimaru was the closest person in strength to a possessed Naruto, and he definitely wasn't on their side. If even Kakashi doubted his ability to fight Naruto, this whole team was honestly doomed should a possessed Naruto come across them, unless they wished to kill the team, and Asuma couldn't entertain that notion for more than a split second. No matter what, Naruto was a Konoha ninja. They could never kill him. It had barely been a minute, and Orochimaru was already feeling the strain of keeping up with the now massively enhanced Jinchuriki. Forget getting the boy as a test subject. The snake Sannin just wanted to leave alive. Unfortunately, Naruto's rage seemed to be growing, and the boy was fast enough that Orochimaru had to fight to stay ahead of the Jinchuriki's attacks. A single punch had as much power as one of Tsunade's, so Orochimaru was in no hurry to get hit by one. And as he dodged another blast of air, he wished the teen would stop roaring. His ears hurt from the noise, and the boy was now just casually destroying trees as well. There was a distinct pause, and Orochimaru looked at the Jinchuriki oddly as the teen stopped his rampage. The boy had closed his eyes and seemed to be breathing deeply. Naruto opened his eyes, breathing deeply as he focused. A blanket of rage had overtaken him as he had felt Hiramaru get injured within his mind. The inherent spiritual properties of the Kusanagi allowing it to hurt the ice dragon. But as the fight progressed, he saw how Orochimaru had continued to stay a step ahead of him, which he attributed to being in a berserker-like state. As Naruto's mind rapidly focused, he controlled his anger, funneling even more of the Kyubi's power through his body as he let out a soul-chilling roar. A giant column of chakra burst into the sky as the ground shook from the sudden uptick in chakra being outputted by the teen. Naruto's skin swiftly peeled off, the sheer malevolence of the Kyubi's chakra overcoming his own natural resistance to its chakra. Naruto's roar transitioned from pure rage to a mix of anger and pain, a swirling helix of energy appearing around him as the transformation completed. Naruto had changed. Before, he had merely been cloaked in the fox's chakra, starting out as a translucent red, and as more tails appeared, becoming a much more opaque blood red. But now, he looked monstrous. No features could be seen on his body, as it was covered in a mix of blood and burning skin, only his body shape could be determined, with 4 tails added on. But the most disturbing part were his bright white, completely blank eyes. Somehow, looking into them, you could tell there was no humanity left in those orbs. And you would be right. Orochimaru looked on in not a little bit of awe, well aware that the fight was rapidly worsening for him, as he had barely been able to combat the 3-tailed Naruto, which had already been a major upgrade over 2-tailed Naruto. He shuddered to think of what this monstrosity could do. His questions were swiftly answered when the now 4 tails Naruto opened his mouth, a large ball of chakra condensing in front of the thing's gaping maw. Whatever. Then swallowed the ball of chakra, before grinning. The abdomen of the possessed Naruto then puffed up. At this point, Orochimaru had a faint inkling of what was going to happen. These suspicions were validated when Naruto cracked open his mouth and fired the attack, which the snake Sannin now recognized to be a Bijudama. With no time to lose, Orochimaru slammed both palms on the ground. summoning forth his ultimate shield. Sanju Rashomon. The concentrated ball of chakra slammed into the first of the Rashomon gates, and exploded. Neji, Kakashi and the rest of Konoha team were treated to a very brief look at some of the most storied and revered defensive gates that Konoha had, the Rashomon gates. Cages and cage class ninja used them very frequently in the early days of the villages. And to see them in these days was a treat. Until they were annihilated by the Bijudama. Orochimaru gasped, impaled as he was on a tree branch. The injury itself was not overly harmful, but the sheer devastation caused by just a single Bijudama was astounding. He realized, instantly, why the Akatsuki had essentially standing orders to leave the Kyubi Jinchuriki to leader Sama. No one else could compete with this level of power. There was a shallow trench from where the Jinchuriki had fired the attack, and then that widened into an absolutely massive crater, shaped into a long cylinder instead of a hole in the ground, due to impacting the Rashomon. In some corner of his mind, Orochimaru cackled insanely, and in another, he wept. There was no combating this. He had summoned 3 Rashomon gates. The most that had ever needed to be summoned was 4, and the Bijudama had swept them away in a second. A 4-tailed Bijudama had wiped out his most powerful defense in a second. Orochimaru ran. Naruto and the Kyubi smiled. Their ruse had worked. In front of the great tower, aim. A tall ninja cloaked in black, with a hood pulled over his face, shouted into the gloom that seemed constant in the village hidden in rain. Oi, anyone, is anyone here? I want to join your organization thing. Hey. There was no response from the villagers, and he had driven himself mad trying to talk to them earlier. None of them had shut up about their angel or their god. It was enough to drive someone insane. A calm voice asked him a question in such a chilling and sudden tone that the ninja jumped. Who are you, and why are you here? He chuckled, sounding only slightly unhinged, biting out his words. Why am I here? Why am I here? I'm here to join the Akatsuki, whoever the fuck you are. Leave aim immediately. The man could finally put a face to the voice as he looked upwards, a blue-haired kunoichi garbed in the simple black dress accented with red clouds that was signature of the Akatsuki. She had wings made of, was that paper, coming out of her back, as she stood on the very edge of the highest tower in the village. The fuck? No, I'm here to sign up, join up, whatever. I'm not leaving. He scowled, baring his teeth up at the woman above him. I didn't drag my ass over to this cesspool to take in the sights, you feel me? Whatever else the man was going to say was blown away when the kunoichi frowned, and opened her wings, flapping them once and generating an extreme amount of wind. Kami, what is this, a circus? Where do I go to sign up? Do you have a notice board or something? Where I can tear off a bit of paper and call in? Hello. Conan's frown became more pronounced. This man, he was not only insulting AIM, the village she and Na leader had worked so hard to build up, but he was also mocking Akatsuki. And as an organization made up entirely of S-rank ninja, such an insult could not pass. So she attacked. Hey, whoa, what the foo? The man swore as he dodged a sudden hail of paper slips, each inscribed with an explosive seal. He wove between the strange rain of paper, mouth set into a grim line as he realized he would have to prove that he was worthy of joining these fucks, and that meant taking down their mascot or whatever that was attacking him. After all, he wasn't already a criminal with a history of country-level offenses, was he? Fucking hell of a sudden exam. Good thing I've been studying for this one all my life, right? Conan scowled. This man was taking everything too easily. She was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't notice the man drawing a long, thin katana until he had sliced in her direction, a blade of wind nearly slicing her head off as she swerved. So she upped the ante, and detonated all of the bombs that were lying around him. Conan savored the look of extreme panic on the unknown man's face as he saw the bombs sizzle for a split second, before going off. The man panted within the debris cloud, before smirking. Small crackles of lightning flickering around his body as he jabbed with his now much different blade. A lance of lightning speared out towards Conan, who yet again only just managed to get out of the way in time, but not before one of her wings was sheared off, making her tumble down to the ground. Ha! Gotcha bitch! The smoke cleared, and Conan peered blearily into the cloud, mouth setting into a thin line as she beheld the cackling ninja. This would not do, so she let her control over this particular paper clone slip. Hundreds of papers flew in every direction as she detonated the whole square. Or would have, if the man hadn't stabbed his rapier. When did he switch to a rapier at her, blowing a hole through her chest and stopping her attack in its tracks? Maybe the Akatsuki isn't as strong as I heard. Or at least, I hope you're the weakest. And easiest. This last part was said with a lecherous grin. Conan's temper exploded as she screamed, "T!" Thousands of paper notes swarmed the square as 3 more paper clones formed. Oh, a foursome. Can't say I mind, but I'm not sure I can take that many at once. Conan could barely hold onto her vaunted and acclaimed control now, her anger. Her rage, at the implication that she would ever be unfaithful to Naga, Yahi, leader. Sheesh, don't take it so hard. Take something else hard though, if you know what I mean. Whatever else the man would have said, it was frozen in his throat as the skies opened up, and a veritable flood of rain fell down from the heavens. Leader had arrived. Pain surveyed the scene before him. Conan lay on the ground, or at least one of her paper clones did. Her face was streaked with tears and contorted into a grimace of pain and rage. A strange, unknown man stood in front of her, small tendrils of lightning covering his body as he struggled to move against Pain's gravity manipulation. Pain mused for a second, then flicked his hand, throwing the unknown man away. It was likely that he had used some form of genjutsu on Conan, and that was what caused her distress. Whatever, the man couldn't possibly survive. What was this? The man laughed as he stood on thin air. Such a concept had been foreign to him many months ago, but by now it was second nature to defy the laws of gravity. Whatever gravity manipulation the weird man with the spiky orange hair and fucked up purple eyes had done was obviously ineffectual in the face of his superior Reiatsu control. He grinned, firing yet another lance of lightning at the most likely leader person. The attack disappeared with no discernible cause or effect as soon as it touched the orange-haired dude. Well, that was a bummer. So he tried again, but this time, he concentrated, then shouted as he fired a bar of lightning from his rapier. That attack was deflected as the orange dude calmly intoned, "Shinra Tensai." And then he couldn't move. Well, for a little bit. He struggled, trying to draw his hands together, knowing that he needed every last drop of power to defeat this guy, who so calmly brushed aside one of his strongest attacks. "And remember my name, bastard. I'm Shiro, here to join the Akatsuki." Shiro's hood fell away from his head, angular cheekbones prominent as his short, spiky, white hair waved from the sudden flux of power as the ninja ramped up his Reiatsu. Shiro finally managed to clasp both hands to the hilt of his sword, lightning flickering around him faster and faster. Pain frowned, sending a concentrated blast of gravitational energy at the man, enough to flatten a house. And everything went white with a single screamed word. Bankai. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.